Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Yountville Town Council meeting for Tuesday, August 7th, 2018. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Durham?
Here.
Councilmember Dorman? Here. Councilmember Moeller?
Here.
Vice Mayor Dorenbecker? Here. Mayor Dunbar?
Here. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first order of business to adopt our agenda for this evening. I don't believe there are any changes, so is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So
Make a
moved.
motion.
Second.
I think that was Vice Mayor and Councilmember Dorman seconded. All in favor, please vote.
Are you a yes? Jeff, are you a yes?
Did you get a vote? Yes. So the only three of us, I think, got
We'll just
the.
record.
So I believe that's unanimous.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Now, we get to call on our front row rock stars right away. So, Ruby and Tallulah, if you would please join me. You know how this works, right? You remember from last year? You gotta please meet me up here at the podium so we can recognize Be Kind Napa Day coming up here in Yountville in just a few days.
You can scoot over closer to me, too.
Welcome back. Thank you. Nice to see you. You're getting taller. We still can't give you a bottle of wine like we do some people, I'm sorry. Just live or not? You can turn on the thing. Thank you. Now we're live. Okay. Just like last year. This is a proclamation recognizing Be Kind Napa Day in Yountville. Whereas Napa residents Tallulah and Ruby Finkelstein, with the help of their parents, Judd and Holly, held the first Be Kind Napa Day in August 2017 after being inspired by family friend Lori Phillips of New York City. Ms. Phillips noticed how often her fellow New Yorkers were isolated and did not interact as a community. She made Be Kind buttons and wore them while out and about in New York to encourage friendly interaction. When someone would compliment her button, she would take it off and gift it to that person. The buttons would then be paid forward by their new owners and are now found throughout New York. Whereas, on a visit to New York early in 2017, then 9-year-old Tallulah and 7-year-old Ruby were impressed by these friendly interactions, so they decided to spread kindness in Napa and ordered some of the same Be Kind buttons. They now wear Be Kind buttons everywhere they go. Yes, okay, confirmed. And give them to those that comment on them. People all over Napa Valley are wearing the Be Kind buttons and spreading kindness. Whereas the second annual Be Kind Napa Day will be held on Saturday, August 18th, 2018, kicking off with a kindness walk in Yountville, the heart of the Napa Valley. After receiving Be Kind buttons, walkers will stroll through Yountville on the way to a Be Kind celebration at the Napa Valley Museum on the grounds of the California Veterans Home, where they will enjoy ice cream, cookies, and family-friendly activities. Whereas Be Kind Napa Day is a kid-driven and kid-led event that brings people together to spread friendship and community spirit. Now therefore, be it resolved that I, John F. Dunbar, Mayor of the Town of Yountville, on behalf of the Yountville community, recognize the efforts by Tallulah and Ruby to create a greater sense of community and kindness throughout the Napa Valley and encourage everyone to embrace their positive spirit and support Be Kind Napa Day. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So let's hold this together so we can get a picture. Would you like to share any thoughts? I think you would, right? You
Yes.
get to come here once a year.
Well, first of all, thank you for having us. And thank you for bringing this celebration to Napa. It's going to be a great event to show people that kindness is important. Well, thank you for having us. We're we're very excited for the Be Kind event this year, and Oh, you want me to talk about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure,
So, wait.
Yes.
Okay. So me and Tallulah started this group it's called the Kindness Kids. We help with community service projects and kindness projects for the community. So yeah, they're gonna help put on the event too. But thank you guys for having us. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see a basket involved here, but also I believe it's 9 a.m., is that right? On Saturday the 18th? 9:30. 9:30. Yeah. Ah.
9:30 a.m. Kindness Walk begins at Yountville Community Center, 6516 Washington Street, Yountville. And then 11 o'clock a.m. Kindness Celebration at Napa Valley Museum, 55 President Circle, Yountville. Yes, that's when it starts.
That's when it is. All right. All right, we're going to get all kinds of, keep bringing it on here. That's awesome. So I'll tell you what, if you give me 5 of these, you can pass them out, even better. You're better at this. Here, could you pass one out to Councilmember Moeller?
Thank you.
All right. And then maybe what we could do is put a supply of those on the table by the door, and anyone that doesn't have them yet can certainly get their Be Kind button. Thank you both very much for being young leaders in our community.
That's right.
It's really great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Oh, no, we've got
You passed them all out already. Thank you. Yes, that's what it was for. All right. So we have a supply over there at the table in case anyone doesn't have one from last year or somebody hasn't been kind enough to give them theirs already. Well, we're going to keep the good vibes rolling here with the recognition of the town finance director and finance department for receiving the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for the town's comprehensive annual financial report, also known as the CAFR, for 2016-2017. So who's going to join me at the...
Well, unfortunately,
I want to give the plaque to somebody.
It will probably have to be me because Maria is out ill today. So,
all right, Steve,
that's regard.
meet me over there, please. It's always the case. It's short and it's all.
Thank you.
But I do want to recognize also for folks to see this, since 2012, every year our finance department and our entire staff has earned this recognition. So it's something to be very proud of. We balance our budget every year. It's not just that. They do a lot of work all year long to make sure that our financial affairs are in order. So on behalf of the entire team, congratulations.
Thank you.
There you go. You can sit over there if you want.
I will say that this is an honor bestowed and earned by the whole organization because the CAFR is a comprehensive review of our financial performance, but it's also expenditure control organization, the team members all working, and I am very proud of the organization in the sense that this is our 7th consecutive year of earning the recognition at this level, and for an agency of our size, that's actually a very good track record. This is not something a lot of small agencies earn on a regular basis or even apply for to be evaluated by various folks. So thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to our team. Next up, we have a presentation of retrospective premium adjustment refund for the town by our Parsac General Manager, Joanne Rennie. Oh, there you are. I was looking in the audience. I couldn't see you.
I was hiding in the back. And this time, John, the
Oh,
presentation.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
So, Mayor Dunbar and council members, it's a big check. It's
We're
a-
gonna have the move the bus reveal in a second.
So we can turn it around so
Sure,
you
we
can see
can
that.
turn it around.
So it's an honor to be here tonight to congratulate the town manager, Steve Rogers, and his management team for exceptional performance over the past year. The town chose membership in Parsac, a joint powers authority, for risk sharing in 1990. And Parsac takes its role as fiduciary of the taxpayer trust very seriously. We are a public agency, not an insurance company. Funds not used for claims and expenses are returned to the agency for programs and services. Right there. And we're also your partners in public service. Less than a year ago, we were here behind the scenes providing resources and support during adversity. First the fire, and then the tragedy at the Veterans Home. We'd like to thank the council for giving us so much of Steve's valuable time. He has been one of the guiding forces behind Parsac. He serves as our vice president, as chairman of the Loss Control Committee, and he's had a significant role in shaping the organization. He's a strong proponent for safety, and his practical and proactive approach to risk management helps this town accomplish its goals of service to the community. The town's also benefited from its membership in Parsac through this networking arrangement. You now have a relationship with a city far to the south, Rancho Cucamonga, for GIS services. I'd also like to extend our gratitude to Joe and Julie and Priya for participation in Parsac's ad hoc committees. This is a group that thrives on its members' energy and volunteerism. So, Mayor Dunbar, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Steve, come get this. You helped earn it.
Good news is the real one is taxable, right?
Yeah. I'll make sure that's positive.
I'll trade.
You'll trade me.
I think that's it. We're going to stop right there. Good night, everyone. Next up is public comment. And for those of you who are not familiar with our process, this would be anything you want to bring to the council's attention on an item not on tonight's agenda. So there will be public comment during our other two public hearings, but if there's something else on your mind you'd like to share with the council, now would be the time. Okay? I guessed wrong.
Oh,
Something else, all right.
never wrong. Alan Tencher, 6740 Jefferson Street. Some time ago, I was surprised to read in the Yountville Sun that there was a filing fee for running for council, and it seemed to me, it struck me, if I remember right, about $700. That struck me as a rather large figure, and ask you to consider whether that might have any impact on participation in city government or town government. I know, or I've read recently, that none of you are running opposed, and I think that's more a statement of your abilities and the great job you're doing rather than a $700 fee. But the town, I think, is run very well. It's good financial responsibility, as we just saw. And I just ask you at the appropriate time to consider whether that filing fee and the magnitude of it has an impact on participation in the democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm not sure if we're allowed to elaborate. Gary, do you think there is any latitude being a public comment? Or should we just maybe post something on our website that informs, gives an answer to that, why the fee is what it is?
Yeah, I think we can post something. My understanding is that's actually for the candidate's statement.
Right, if I could just provide clarification, the town doesn't actually charge a filing fee. However, if you would like a candidate statement in English and Spanish, then the fee for that service is $672, and that fee is provided by the county elections, the town of Yountville is part of that consolidated election process. There is an option to select no candidate statement, and then only the person's name would appear on the ballot.
So it's not a required fee. It's if you are participating as a candidate and want your statement in the voter's guide, the voter pamphlet.
That's correct. And it is required to be in Spanish and English. Per the 2010 census, we are a Spanish language community county.
Okay. Any other questions that are about items not on our agenda? Seeing no more, we'll go from public comment to our consent calendar. If we have any questions or items that need to be pulled, or if not, I would entertain a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
If I can.
Yes, Gary.
Mayor and council members, before you on the dais regarding item 7D, the ADU ordinance, is a red line slightly corrected. There was a typo in two of the recitals regarding the date of the public hearing. It's July 17th, not June 18th. And there are copies of that corrected ordinance here if any member of the public would like it. There are no substantive changes to the ordinance from what was held for a first reading at the last meeting, but I did want to note that change.
And do we have, do we need to call out that there was a, I'll say either a typo or language on the tree services resolution as well?
Yes, and I might defer to Joe on that because.
But is that something that we need to call out?
I'll just say, we,
Go ahead.
all right. The clarification, the staff report and the title was very clear, but we added a recital to make sure that it was not to exceed 45,000. So again, no substantive
change.
Just a consistency, trying to make sure that that was very clear in the recitals of the resolution.
Okay. So you don't feel like we need to pull anything for clarification beyond that? Okay. So with that, is there a motion to adopt the consent calendar as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, let's
Go
just
ahead.
verbally do it.
Second, ask for a second.
All right, we have a motion, Councilmember Durham, a second. Is there a second? Councilmember Mueller, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that passes unanimously. Sometimes our electronics don't work quite as smoothly as we'd like, but we want to keep moving. Okay, let's move on to our next, we have no presentation, so we're going to get right to our first public hearing, item 9A, regarding a home occupation use permit at 6565 Yount Street. And I'll receive a staff report before we open the public hearing.
Good evening. Tonight you have before you an application for a major home occupation permit for Yount Street Glass. And the zoning ordinance of the Yountville Municipal Code includes the provisions for home occupations, and it breaks those home occupations into two categories, one for minor home occupations and one for major home occupations. A minor one is for either an office only or for the storage of materials in one vehicle parked on site for a business that is otherwise conducted off-site, and those are approved administratively. A major home occupation, such as the one before you tonight, is anything greater than storage of materials or an office use, and those are approved by the Town Council by use permit and subject to conditions of approval. So here the applicant produces jewelry, accessories, and art from the garage and a spare bedroom in the residence. And one of the main components of the business is that they repurpose wine bottles into jewelry, some of which occurs in the garage. And here is a floor plan of the garage showing the 4 pieces of equipment and a photograph showing one side. And there's a wet tile saw, a drill press, and a grinder. And these pieces of material cut the wine bottles to prepare them within the residence. And this is shown as the workroom. Kilns are used to fire and polish the glass, and soldering torches are used to create the silver clasps and hoops, things of that nature. You see both the layout in the picture to the right and a floor plan which shows the 2 work desks, 3 kilns, and then a storage area. So the applicant has had a business license for Yount Street Glass since 2010, and it's been renewed annually. The home occupation permit that was filed at the time indicates that it was an office use, and it started as an office use, but it changed over time. It started as a hobby. It really progressed to gifts for friends and families, and then it became sales of jewelry to tasting rooms and others that are provided off-site. However, the home occupation permit was never updated for this intensified use, and it was discovered by the building inspector when he conducted an inspection for a 220 receptacle that was located in the hall, and its purpose was to run an oxidizing compressor. That discovery by the building inspector led to later inspections by town planning, building, and code enforcement staff, as well as the fire marshal, and it led to a subsequent notice of violation for the use of the propane and compressed oxygen tanks, and these are combustible gases and oxidizing agents for the torches that are used to assemble the jewelry because of the flame that increases a fire hazard, and it's used being conducted within a room in the house with combustible surfaces and without mechanical or forced ventilation. Since that NOV, or notice of violation, was issued, the applicant has scaled back the use to try to find a way to operate out of the business, and I'll go over the different ways they've scaled it back to address some of our concerns. One is that they remove the oxidizing compressor from the hall and the 30-pound compressed oxygen tank from the workroom, and they've replaced it with a small portable tank with a regulator and flashback arrestor. They've removed the individual propane tanks, similar to what you'd see in use for an outdoor grill, and they've replaced these with one small portable tank, also with a regulator and a flashback arrestor. They've eliminated the larger of the two torches, and they're keeping a small jewelry torch that will be used on a non-flammable work surface. And they've relocated the gas kilns so that they're located 12 feet from the walls, which are combustible surfaces, and they'll later retrofit the area for non-combustible surfaces. Additionally, we did research into the manufacturer specifications for each of these pieces of equipment, and they indicate that each of these pieces can be used safely indoors, provided that the installation and use instructions are complied with. And in the garage, the applicants propose to maintain the wet tile saw, the drill press, and the grinder. The applicant indicates that the business receives regular deliveries by U.S. Mail and UPS, and they also receive deliveries of glass bottles. The applicants indicate that customers do not regularly come to the home to purchase items. However, they have clarified that on maybe up to 3 occasions they've hosted tours of some of the wineries that sell their products so they can understand more the process and better sell those items. So tonight, it is a policy question that is before the town council on this home occupation. And the question is whether this is an acceptable use for a dwelling or whether this is a use that should be conducted more in a commercial zoning district. And I go back to it's a use question, and all questions that come before the council are a use question, and it's really part of a 2-part process. You make a decision on the use, and then later, as we move into the building permit stage, we do plan check to determine if fire and building codes can be met, and that's because at the entitlement stage, we don't have the level of detail to know really all of the answers. And so as part of the second issue is the occupancy issue, and we know the building official and the fire marshal have both indicated that this is an F2 occupancy, and that's a low hazard factory occupancy because of the use of glass and metals, and that is a different occupancy than the R3 residential occupancy. And this house was constructed as a house for the purposes of sleeping, eating, and living. And if a portion of the house is converted to an F2 occupancy, we have to look to the fire code and the building code to have the adequate separation of those uses so that it's safe for the occupants who live in the home, but for neighbors who live in close proximity to some, neighboring buildings are as close as 10 feet because of 5-foot side yard setbacks, and so there are the sleeping quarters of nearby residences nearby. So we'll answer that next question of occupancy if this project is approved and it moves to the building permit stage. We have included a condition of approval that allows the applicant the option of conducting a code study, and that would be by a licensed architect or engineer to look at the code and determine how this room, being rated an F2 occupancy, could meet those fire and building safety codes. So we're turning it over to you for a policy discussion, and in order to approve the project, you have to make both the use permit findings and the home occupation findings that are in the resolution, and we've included some proposed conditions of approval for the project as well.
Thank you. Before I ask if there are questions of the report, Joe or any other of our staff, or is there any way to pull out a few more chairs for folks? I'm not sure there's even room to do that.
We've gotten them all out.
Okay, so
We're in capacity.
got it. It's always good to see capacity crowd. Questions of the staff report before I open the hearing? Councilmember Dorman?
Thank you, Mayor. Before I pose my questions, I'd like to put a disclosure on the record. I was contacted by the applicants. I made a site visit. We discussed details of their business operations. What I heard and saw is reflected in the photos, reports, and narratives included in our agenda packet, and I have also looked at sections of the fire code referenced in our agenda materials. So with that said, I just want to clarify, please, Planning Director Liston, that tonight we decide use, and if the use is approved, it is still subject to all of the fire code, building code, etc., all of the other requirements.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the staff report? Councilmember Durham?
I'm a little confused. You said we as the council determine use permit first. Is that always the case in businesses? Without any discussion on plans or the...
Right. So as part of a normal project, you receive conceptual plans that show how the building is laid out, what the setbacks are. Those are routed to building and fire for preliminary comment, just as we've received preliminary comment here. But it's really the details that you find in the building permit set during plan check where we can flush through the details and get the specifics on the permit before it issues. In this case, it's a little harder to separate the use from the occupancy issues, and yet it's still a two-part process.
And if I read the application correctly on a minor home occupation and a major home occupation, the difference between a major and minor mostly concern impacts to residential areas as a result of employees or patrons visiting the home. Because all those other questions that are on there are required of a minor or a major home occupation, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And there are two other major home occupations in the town of Yountville?
Two others have been approved over the years, yes. One was for a seamstress, and the second was for a hair and skincare salon.
Okay. Do we have any other manufacturing in the city limits of Yountville?
Not that we're aware through, for commercial properties. It's hard to say with home occupations because things just occur in homes. I think uses morph from a more hobby type thing to something that may be a small business, and we're not always aware. So I would guess this probably isn't the only one.
But in the commercial districts, we do not, correct?
Well, we have, or the town council has approved manufacturing of beer, small brew pub. That's really the only thing I can think of.
If I may, Councilmember Durham, the other thing I would say is we do have and have had other baking and some of the home kitchen permits that have been approved under state and county law. So those are a few of the others that do occur throughout town that would be a little more different than the typical home occupation. We also have probably the most common is, well, we have home occupations for offices, but we also have a lot of wine brokers and some of the wine folks that represent, and sometimes they have deliveries or people picking up very minor. So that's a common thing in Yountville.
But your question was manufacturing.
I'll rephrase the question. Do we have any F2 businesses in Yountville?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. So would a jewelry retail space that makes the product on site in a commercial location qualify as a comparison? I think that's what you're.
Yeah, so you would look to the components that are devoted to the retail and the manufacturing, and then the occupancy would be based on that. It may fall into one or the other. There could be a portion of an F2 occupancy within a retail jewelry establishment. Yes.
There could be artisan activities, whether it be glass blowing or manufacturing, jewelry manufacturing, that might have some of those manufacturing components and be in a retail space.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Mueller?
Yes, there's some information here about the proposed indoor use on page 205 of the staff report. And one that would like some information on, it said that the 3 4.5-gallon propane tanks will be removed from the spare bedroom and will be replaced with a 1-pound container which will be filled from the larger storage tank located in the backyard. So I'd like some more information about how it's going to work. All the ones that I'm familiar with, the small 1 pounds, read right on the back, do not refill. They're flammable. So can you tell me how that works exactly?
I don't have an answer to that, so I would ask that you ask the applicant when they give their presentation.
All right, thank you.
Would that be comparable to a barbecue propane tank?
The 3 that they've removed from the residence that are the 4.5-pound ones, yes, and those are the ones that will be in the storage container, as I understand it, in the backyard. I don't know the mechanism about filling the smaller container.
Thank you.
Or how it's done.
Okay. Any other questions, Vice Mayor? No. Just a couple here. Does the Old Town Historic Zoning category matter in this case at all, Sandra? Does that change the evaluation of the?
No. So it's a residential zoning district, and home occupations can be conducted within residential zoning districts.
Okay. And I just want to get a little clarity on the how this all came about. That in the staff report you have in 2013 building permit to install sub panel, et cetera, et cetera. 2018 building permit to install receptacle in the hallway with an oxidizing compressor. And then we jumped to 2018. So then it appears that town's planning, building, and code enforcement staff met with the applicants and conducted an inspection. So I'm just trying to get what motivated. It seems that there was no concern for 5 years, or just not an awareness for 5 years, and then there was an inspection. Could you explain just how that all happened and how we got through from May 16th to July 13th?
So in 2013, the town conducted an inspection for that sub-panel. It was under a different building inspector than we have now, and we don't know what that inspector saw or didn't see. He was there on the property to do the inspection for the sub-panel. It was a valid building permit, and it received a final inspection. It wasn't until 2018 that the applicants applied for another building permit, this time for a 220 receptacle, and the building inspector was out on the property to conduct the final inspection. When he observed some of the equipment, some of the extension cords, and asked to see the room where the use was being conducted, he had concerns as to the items that were being stored inside without apparent approval, so he brought that back to staff, and we did conduct inspections with the property owners as a team, and we brought the fire marshal into it to share his concerns early on, and that's what led to a notice of violation. The notice of violation gave options, that there may be an option to continue this type of use with a major home occupation permit from the town council, and that's what they elected to pursue. They could have discontinued the use permanently. We know that they have discontinued the use since they received the notice of violation, and they have taken efforts to scale back the operation considerably. I don't have photos of all of those, but I did share them in your packet so you could see that very large black 30-gallon compressed oxygen tank and the oxygen frog that was in the hall. So some of the large storage of oxygen and combustible gases have been removed, and we believe that's definitely a step in the right direction.
So again, I'm trying to get to how this came about, and it looks like in 2013, when the building permit was issued, there seemed to be an understanding both with the applicants and, I'll say, the town / inspector, that everything was okay.
Yes.
And then there was some evolution of the business in those 5 years to get to where there was an increase in equipment and the operation in the home, but that never came up until another permit was being requested in 2018.
Correct.
And is it normal that we would go 5 years without inspecting a home occupation business, or what's our normal process? Is it random? Is it only triggered by a new permit request?
We only inspect major home occupation permits because the others are office use only or storage of materials in a car that you bring home at the end of the day. So they don't require inspections, and so we didn't realize that it was a major home occupation use being conducted until the building permit inspection.
That's the May 16th inspection? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, Vice Mayor and then Councilmember Durham again.
So I would like to clarify, I do not see what the fire marshal's concerns were delineated in the report. Can you tell me what they were, and, are they included somewhere that I haven't seen them?
It is the storage and use of propane and oxygen indoors, because those are combustible gases and the oxygen serves as an oxidizing agent. The introduction of the torch introduces more flammability concerns. So it's really those three elements. When looking at the building code, it classifies occupancies by use, and so it does fall into an F2 occupancy, and that's really defined as the use of a building or even a portion of a building for assembling, disassembling, fabricating, finishing, manufacturing, packaging, repair, or processing of a list of items. And this didn't fall into the higher hazard category, but into the low hazard for the use of glass and metals. And that's how it's classified from the building inspector. And it is fire and combustibility concerns and the lack of a separation between these two occupancies in one building.
But F2 is low hazard.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Durham?
How often have the two current major home occupation businesses been inspected?
One of them was before my time here, so I don't know. The other, we conducted monitoring on a monthly basis to review the foot traffic and vehicle traffic to the business, and it's subject to annual monitoring.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions of the staff report? Councilmember Mueller?
Yes, I do have one. Again, in the staff report, under the proposed uses, it says the proposed hours of operation within the garage are 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and within the spare bedroom are 24/7. So can you explain why there's a difference between those two designations?
Sure, because uses in the garage occur when the garage door is open. They tend to make some amount of noise, and so daytime hours are more appropriate. The uses that they can be conducting in the bedroom, one wouldn't know in a neighboring residence that they might be soldering a jewelry connection or something of that nature, or simply even running a kiln because it gets programmed, it runs for a very long period of time, comes up to heat very, very slowly, and then turns itself off. That could really occur at any time.
Even though it's a business?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question about the findings. It looks to me, if I understand your report, that you feel like all the findings as presented have been satisfied with the changes of the operation that are being proposed by the applicants. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions about the staff report? Okay, I'll go ahead and formally open the public hearing. And before I invite the applicants to make statements, I just want to make sure that I acknowledge e-comments and emails that were received by several members of the community, some of whom I see in the audience, that made comments regarding this item. And those are available to the public if you'd like to see those specific comments. So now I'd like to invite the applicants forward to tell us about the business.
Thank you all very much, Mayor Dunbar, council members. I know you've already seen our narrative.
You could just keep that mic in front of whichever of you is speaking. That'd be
Okay.
great. Thank you.
This is not easy. I know you've all seen our narrative about how we started our business slowly and kind of how we ended up here. And so we won't go into too much detail about that, but we'd be happy to answer any questions about that. But what we'd like to do is thank you for giving us the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about ourselves and what we do and how we do it, and a little bit more about our business, our tiny little business, and anything else you want to know. And I want to start out by apologizing. I honestly didn't know that we needed a major use permit. I thought, all these years we're getting our licenses, that we're doing the right thing, and I really apologize for that. And I hope that that it's a good outcome, because we really like doing what we do. We like making things, and we're prepared to do whatever we need to do to meet the town requirements. And I also want to thank the staff so much for your help. It's guiding us through this process has been I'm not easy for them, I'm sure, because it wasn't easy for us, and we really appreciate it. So thank you. Take it away, Cindy.
I feel like Tallulah.
Where's your button?
Be kind. I remember. It's the message of the night, people. So I have. I get sort of some of the easy. Oh, you want me to talk about that? Okay. Okay, that's Ruby. So just to address a couple of things that came up in the discussion of your question about the 2013 inspection. We had our house remodeled, and part of it was to the main reasons that we did that were to put the sub panel in the third bedroom, so that we could put our kilns there.
It all started out because we're growing so slowly. We started growing, and we got new equipment. And we had to put them in various rooms, and it was just a mess.
Yeah,
and
it wasn't pretty.
It wasn't pretty, and so we decided to consolidate everything and make it a little tidier.
So
I realize you're making it very difficult on our clerk to try to keep the transcript straight.
Oh.
Maybe if one of you could present, then the other could present.
Oh yeah,
that would be helpful.
Well, that was the plan.
Thank you.
We're going off script.
Be kind to our town clerk as well.
Sorry. So in 2013, when we had the building inspector out, and we actually have our contractor here, and he was like, well, why are you putting an electric sub panel in a third bedroom? And we said, because we want our kilns here, because we make jewelry. And his response was, my wife would think that's so cool. So we've always tried to be as open and transparent as possible. Anybody that walks past our garage knows, and if they have a question, we'll tell them what we're doing, and and that we, and describe the business as it is. So we were very surprised at the 2018 inspection, and really up until that point, we hadn't added anything. And then it was the compressor. I wanted to do lamp work. And melt glass at in a different way. Thank you. And so that's why we asked for the 220 line and the inspection. That sort of pulled the thread that unraveled our business. So that was that question. The other question, I might as well address this since I'm on a roll here.
It all rolled back to 2013. So everything that we did.
Sorry, Michelle.
Everything that we did between 2013 and 2018 has been rolled back with the removal of the equipment that Sandra described. So what we have now is exactly what we had in 2013.
That's what I was trying to say. Kay said it better, but I know she did.
You got to work with me here, please.
Yeah. So your question, Councilwoman, about the refillable tanks. The other reason that we had the house remodeled was because we wanted to put solar panels on the roof, because we're also a certified green business for California. So the idea was to run our kilns off solar energy. We run one of our cars off solar energy. The findings that we get are from American. We try to buy American-made. The findings that we get are from a plant in New Mexico that also runs on solar energy. So we try to eliminate waste. And the green, those green Coleman things, that Coleman propane tanks that you have that are the 1 pound disposable ones. REI sells one that is refillable, and that's the short answer to that question. So now I'm going to go back on my script and thank and acknowledge our supporters who are here tonight. Thank you very much.
So I will just warn you, I don't mean to be a real downer, but we really don't allow boos or applause, to be fair to everyone in here. We feel like sometimes that puts pressure on folks that may not agree with everyone, and it makes it harder for them to speak. So
Sure.
if you would just respect everybody's space here, thank you.
So we do, really appreciate folks coming out for us, and including our friends, family, other artists, small business owners in Napa Valley. And for some of you that don't know us, there's a little bit of background. We've both lived in Yountville for about 20 years. I'm a I don't know why I have to read this. I'm a retired physician. I knew some of this I know. And I've been here in Napa Valley for about 30 years, and started out in a private practice in Napa, and then moved to the Veterans Home, and I retired from there after 16 years of service. So that's me. Kay is only going to let me say two things about her: that she's a Napa Valley native, and she has retired. She retired from finance, and this really sort of grew as we wanted to find something where we could make things. We both enjoy really making any item, whether it's a loaf of bread or a piece of jewelry. And so as our careers were winding down, we wanted something that we could enjoy doing together. Started out as a hobby. We've taken a number of classes. And then I got this sort of crazy idea to, instead of purchasing glass, that we could find glass easily in Napa Valley by using wine bottles. So that was the plan. So we just started to sort of fool around with that. We had people friends that worked in wineries, and then they started selling our products in the wineries, so the idea was that we would take wine bottles from local wineries, make them into jewelry, sell them back to the wineries, and then because the tour usually ends up in the gift shop, and after a wine tour, people usually, want to buy something. So we kind of fit into that. So we've had tremendous support from our neighbors and friends who enjoy Napa Valley wines, and then we get the bottles and off we go. In fact, before we had any winery clients at all, we relied on our neighbors, the Klotzes, and then the Silvas. They drink really nice wine, and so they are, and they're also very stylish, and they've purchased from us. And as you can see, our friends are a pretty put together group. They wear jewelry and like us, and it's really fun to see something that we made be worn. We've had experiences, just like Yountville days, and we will stop you generally if you're wearing something that we made and tell you that that you look good and you're wearing our jewelry. I mean, not like our jewelry, but like the jewelry we made. We've stopped people at Whole Foods as well. So just, I don't know, it's a public confession part of it. But basically, this business is really enhanced. I mean, we're not doing it to make a lot of profit, and we're doing it out of our home because we like making things. I mean, we really like making things, and this has been a vehicle to really connect us to the community. I mean, I come from medicine, Kate comes from finance, and even though we lived so long in the Napa Valley, we weren't really connected to the wine industry or the hospitality industry. And this has just provided a tremendous amount of, of satisfaction. Yeah, it's been wonderful to have this. And we've just met wonderful people in the hospitality and the wine industry, and basically we just want to keep doing it. So. I think that's all I have to say.
And I just want to add just one last little thing, and that's that the Yonge Street Glass has allowed us to be more connected to the community and participating in events, and we're always happy to provide whatever support we can through donations or supplies or whatever we can do. Like, we're really happy to be part of this community and to be able to feel like we're contributing in some way. So I think that's it. We have some samples. You've probably all seen it, but if anybody wants to see what we make, you can just see they're not big. Like we don't weld in a lot of the rules that people think about. With torches.
What I'll tell you is, I think we'll hold off on those because we have.
Bring the girls
I think
back
we have
in.
a very good sense of what you do and how you do it, and the staff has provided quite a few photos of the site. So I appreciate the offer, but
we're happy to take any questions that you have.
that was the next thing I was going to ask. Are there questions of the applicants before we invite the rest of the public? Councilmember Dorman?
Thank you, and thank you for coming tonight. So as I read the findings, that if we are to grant the permit, the findings that we would be asking for, it talks about no clients or customers coming to your business. Is that the case, or is it just not typical for customers to come, but sometimes in a rare instance they do? I just want clarity on that.
It's not typical. We pretty much actively discourage people coming to our house because I'm not that social myself, but also because it's just not appropriate to be selling out of our house, and that's why we have our products in tasting rooms, and we sell online where we just mail it out. Occasionally, what we really enjoy, and I think this has happened just like 3 times over the past 8 years, we'll invite a tasting room, people, or the chamber has come before, so the people that sell our items can see what we do, and it helps them understand the product and how to sell it. So we've had, an average of about 10 or 12 people at a time come just so we show them the process of making the jewelry.
So it would not be a hardship or a change for you if we make findings that say no clients or customers at the house?
It would be just a slight hardship. I wouldn't say hardship, but it would make it more. It would make it more difficult because there's occasionally, like for friends in town, we want to be able to sell to our friends in town and not charge them a shipping fee that doesn't seem to make sense. So, it's pretty rare, but it's certainly not something we encourage.
Thank you.
Councilmember Durham?
Yes. So I've just got a question about the next steps then with the fire. If this major home occupation is allowed, tell me what, I'm confused because I'm not a fire marshal, I'm not a chemist. So with the changes that, with the proposed use indoors, does that take you back to 2013?
Yes.
It does, first of all. Secondly, what does that mean with the fire, with building permits and fire marshals? Are we clear on all this?
That's not up to me. I don't know.
No. I understood, but fire marshals have walked through the house. So, I mean, are the parameters, I'm still confused as to the parameters on the fire marshals and everything.
Well, let me jump in real quick.
Okay.
So there is an occupancy table for different occupancy use types, and an F2 and an R3 should have fire separation, and that might be a 1-hour firewall for a sprinklered building or a 2-hour firewall for an unsprinklered building, and that's a basic interpretation of that table. There are alternative means to comply with the California Building and Fire Code, and that's why we're suggesting an option for a code study, which might indicate that non-combustible tiles could be installed behind the kilns and on the floors and on the work surfaces to deal with the combustible concerns, and that some level of ventilation be installed in a window to ensure there's adequate airflow. And so there's an option that it might be a less onerous fix to retrofit the room, and that's just what we don't know at this time. But we are open to it. Our office works with the fire marshal, and they will work with us to come up with a solution that we don't know what it is yet.
All right. Thank you.
But to follow up that question, if I may, does that still return the business back to 2013 operations?
Well,
that is what's proposed tonight.
Have said they brought it back to 2013.
But they would still, with the 2013 operations, they'd still need potentially the
Those
increased fire
2013
protection.
operations weren't approved, so they may be scaling it back, and we'll look at that level of use versus the most recent prior use.
Right.
I would also say it's probably more important while we're talking about a reference to them rolling back to earlier. I think it's also important to say that the whole operation that they're proposing, as is outlined in the application, will be evaluated going forward, and it will be that basis going forward. So more important to look at the proposed scope of the work and recognize that the building inspection and fire marshal will work with them on regards to that. And that's fairly typical condition that we have with a lot of businesses, commercial, when they would come in.
Right. Other questions of the applicants? Let's go with Councilmember Mueller.
So just so I'm clear, because of this rollback discussion to 2013, that was never, in 2013, they still had basically a computer-based minor business occupation permit. So you could type stuff in your computer and call on your phone and write stuff on a piece of paper. That was what was approved at the time.
Correct. They never had approval for anything more than an office. Yes.
Okay, so the 2013, I don't really see, I'm missing the connection how that, there really isn't any relevance to their current and present
speaks
license.
to the scope of the equipment and materials they were using, but it doesn't take us back to an approved permit.
And the town doesn't really know or have any information exactly what occurred at 2013. Okay.
Just for
so I'm clear.
clarification on that, in 2013, there was a building permit, and I want to make sure, and it's mostly, we've had a good chance to work with the app. A building permit, the inspector comes out and looks at the very specific nature of work. So if you got an electrical permit, or I'll use a simple one, you replace your hot water tank. They go in and they look at that. It's not a use permit review. It's just focused on that particular activity. And in that case, we don't know in 2013 if there was a connection or an observation. But in this particular case, in 2018, we again, and I will point out, staff has worked with the applicant, and we fully agree that there was no ill will or intent on their part. It was a communications and an understanding issue. Honest, they've worked with us. They've been very forthright with us and worked with us cooperatively. So that's just the difference on when they talk about 2013. For them, there was a scale of operation that made sense to them. But I want to be really clear from us, the 2013 was an electrical building permit. 2018 started with an electrical building permit and then the subsequent use review. So hopefully that helps clarify a little bit.
Other questions, Councilmember Mueller?
No, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
And I'm assuming from the conversation and from reading the report and everything that the changes that you're being asked to make, you're willing to bring everything into compliance.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
One other question.
Yes, Councilmember Durham?
So if I understand correctly, though, even rolling back, it'll still be classified as a manufacturing business?
Not according to us, but according to somebody else. But we consider ourselves an art studio, and
not a factory.
And
Very good.
So that's
very good. Understood. Thank you.
I don't have any specific questions for you, so we'll thank you for your comments, and I'll invite any members of the public that would like to speak on this item to come forward. And before you start, I'll just remind folks that we did receive some e-comments and emails, as I noted earlier. So if you're here and you've sent those in, you're welcome to repeat your statements, but they are in the record. I also want to acknowledge that because we do have a large audience in the room, I'm going to ask people to keep their comments to 3 minutes. If we get through everyone's comments and someone is just really needing to say something else, I'll invite you back up for a very brief continuation, but we want to make sure everyone that wants to speak gets a chance to. So our first 3 minutes.
Hi. I was planning on 3 hours, but we'll keep it to 3 minutes. I'm Michael Bork, and I live at 6786 Jefferson Street. I want to start by offering up a significant criticism, because when I walk my dogs by their garage, they adore these people, and they ignore them all the time because they're in there busily working with their little things on and their safety goggles and all that kind of stuff. And if we could put something in their use permit that required them to say hello to my dogs, I'd be much happier. So, in seriousness, I know that this is not a discussion about the quality of the people who are here in front of you. I appreciate that Mr. Rogers said some really good things about them, and I think these are the kind of people that we want in our community, that we want working in our community. The interesting thing to me about Yountville, and I've been here for 27 years, is that it's this little town that's just filled with mega everything. I mean, we have more stars than any other community per capita. We have hotel rooms that cost as much as when I go to London, or more than even New York and things like that. I mean, everything is so big here. And so all of us are engaged in this goal of trying to keep Yountville. Still the kind of place that you can walk your dog, be ignored by people, things like that. That's what really makes a difference. I love the fact that when I walk by and that garage door is open and they're in there just very quietly working away. The school is noisier than they are by far. So I just, again, what I've heard and what I read in the staff report is that there's a very reasonable process by which they will be looked at very carefully to determine that what they do is safe for them and for their neighbors. I applaud that. I would expect that to be the case for anybody who has a business of any kind in this town. But I implore you to encourage these kinds of businesses by people who wish to stay here. And don't, decide it's too expensive and they move off to North Dakota or something where they, I'm sure, would be allowed to do this. So please approve this. Please do your job to make sure that everybody's safe. Please make sure they pay attention to my dogs. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? All right.
This will be very quick.
Okay.
My son won't forgive me if I don't speak.
Come on up here. Yeah, he's got to come with you, though.
So my name is Linda Nelson, and I live in Napa. Jonathan and I live in Napa, and I work at the Vets Home. I'm a physician there, and I worked with Cindy for 8 years before she unfortunately retired. And so, as the gentleman said, I'm not sure what you need as a character witness, but that's what I'm giving. And Cindy has the absolute highest of integrity, intelligence, and reliability, and that includes her personal and professional life. So, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Ms. Reeves, I think you're next.
Pam Reeves, 6887 Jefferson Street. And as one of the only other major home occupation use permit holders in town, I would like to strenuously support this application. If you look at the staff report, there is a mention of the fact that in the general plan, we need to be taking a look at whether it's too onerous to have a home occupation in Yountville, and what the standards and what the fees should be to not prevent this kind of thing. I think one of the speakers at our general plan meetings indicated that in order to keep the vibrancy of our town and to keep the life in our town, we need to be less strict about zoning areas and to be more flexible about uses in those areas in order for the town to maintain life. And I think that they also talked about the restrictiveness of suburban standards, which is what we have, suburban zoning standards. And in this town, if we want to have real residents, ones that are here every day, and who participate in the community and contribute to the community, I think we need to make it easy for them to live in the community. And some of us need to make a living, and a home occupation is a way to do that in a place where commercial property and commercial rents are pretty unavailable to the normal person. I also wanted to step back a bit and get some perspective on some of the things we saw as machinery and mechanical devices and dangerous gases. I don't know anyone who doesn't have a propane grill, and oftentimes you have 2 propane tanks so that you don't run out in a barbecue situation. So the storage of 3 propane tanks doesn't seem that dangerous as long as the fire marshal can guide the applicants on how to do that properly. And the idea that everyone probably has, if they work on anything, has a small torch. And drill press. I have lots of drill presses in my neighborhood, and tile cutters. So those are not unusual items. They're not manufacturing items. They are useful tools. And the idea that the applicant brought up, that it's an art studio, it's not a manufacturing studio or factory. It's a small business. Otherwise, it couldn't be housed in one room in a house. So I really feel like the application is worthy of real consideration and approval because it allows Yountville to maintain a high standard of vitality and just access for real people.
Thank you, Ms. Reese. Okay, she used 25 seconds of, I guess, Ms. Diver McAvoy's time.
Whitney Diver McAvoy, President and CEO of the Yountville Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Pam, for your thoughtful comments. I'd like to second everything she said. So well said. I sent in a letter of support of Yonge Street Glass to the record, but I'd also like to read it for everybody in the audience this evening. I'm here in support of Yonge Street Glass to continue operating their business out of their home. Yonge Street Glass is a unique small business producing beautiful artisan craft jewelry from recycled wine bottles and sustainable cork. Kathy and Cynthia, owners of Yonge Street Glass, are respected, upstanding business owners, active citizens in town, and great supporters of the arts community and an active member of the Yountville Chamber of Commerce. It is important for the town of Yountville to retain and attract a diverse number of businesses to Yountville. Diversity in our business community is essential to the success of our town. Yonge Street Glass is patronized by both residents and businesses in our community, and I know many of us here in this room have bought stuff from them. Yonge Street Glass is one of the few resident-facing businesses, a category we must sustain and grow, and something that we've been talking a lot in the general plan revision. I encourage town staff to work creatively with Yonge Street Glass to navigate and mitigate permitting issues that would prevent them from continuing to operate their business out of their home. It sounds like staff has been working towards that, and I thank you for that. Of course, we want to take into consideration any of the safety issues for operating such a business and the surrounding homes. Seems like a very unique situation to town, but having such a beautiful artisan business here in Yountville, I think, speaks to the heart of what we're all about. And I really encourage you to support Yonge Street Glass this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Yes. Hello. You found one of those few seats over there. That's good.
I know. It was very comfortable.
They're even leaving it for you to return. That's nice.
Good evening, Mayor Dunbar and Council. I just need, you have my letter.
If you could just for,
Oh,
again,
I'm
we're
sorry.
really making it hard on Michelle
I
tonight.
act like everybody knows me, right? My name is Charlene Silva. I live at 6569 Yonge Street. I live directly next door to Kay and Cindy. We live directly next door to the garage. And I just need to say, when folks raise the issue about people coming in or out or creating any kind of disturbance in the community, I too respect and appreciate your concern for safety, but I can tell you that no one is more concerned about safety than Kay and Cindy. They love their home, they love their animals, they love their neighbors, they're respectful of their neighbors. But I just want to make a comment. I have talked to Mayor Dunbar, Councilman Durham, and many other people about the parking problem on Yonge Street. The challenge that is created in our neighborhood by local businesses. It is in no way created by Yonge Street Glass. There has never been a time because of Yonge Street Glass that I haven't been able to have service at my home because there was no parking space. So please, if that is somehow going on in anybody's mind, that this artisan studio creates a lot of traffic or disruption for myself or the Klotz family, you would be sadly mistaken. And so we feel extremely proud to live next door to them and would not want to see them lose an activity that brings great joy to them, but also great joy to those of us who live around them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to share their thoughts about this item? Really? Okay. Last chance. Close the public hearing. You can't wave your hand. Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and invite discussion by council. Would either side of the dais like to begin, or shall I pick on someone? Councilmember Mueller, why don't we start over at your side this time?
Okay, let's see. Well, I think the very first thing I would like to say is that what our job is to take a look at the resolution that's been put together and judge it on two factors, both the use and the, hold on one second, the home occupation permit use, and then the use findings. Within each one of those categories, there are listed findings, and we have to then agree with all of the findings within the home occupation permit as well as the use finding. And we also take a look at the staff report and the information they've provided us. In no way in any of this information is there any speculation one way or the other about the wonderful people that we're talking about, the friendly neighbors, how we know everybody, how everybody supports everybody. This is actually a public hearing, and we act in a quasi-judicial manner as judges. So that's where it's sometimes different when you're sitting on this side and the rules that we have to follow versus on that side, and the passion that we see that you all feel. So with that said, there are certainly a few things that I would like to bring up. That yes, this designation by the fire marshal has been termed an F2 factory. That does say it's a low hazard. In my mind, that does not mean no hazard. It is low hazard. And also, it is not us who makes the determination that this is a manufacturing situation. That was also made and pretty much determined when 4 different codes, the Town of Yountville Municipal Code, the California Building Code, the California Mechanical Code, and the California Fire Code, those are the codes that were broken when the violations were issued. So now back to the resolution that's before us. There are certain issues, and again, to remind everybody, we are asked that we need to make all the findings under 2 separate issues. So I'm going to start with the home occupation permit findings. One of them, so this is all technical, it's not really how I feel, it's not how much I love jewelry. I'm a big jewelry lover too. It's what we do as council members and what our job is. So under the home use occupation permit, item number 2, it talks about the garage. We have rules that say we cannot pretty much take a garage out of use for a business. And yes, an argument has been put forward that you could move all this equipment out and then someone could park the car, but that's really not the intent. The intent, and again, we're talking about a business here, and a factory and a manufacturing. So I really can't make that first finding, Sandra, number 2. I can also not make the finding regarding the hours of operation that are being proposed that are in the bedroom 24/7. It says hours of operation are between 8 and 6. So my assumption from asking that question was that the proposed use would be in the bedroom from 24/7. So under that stipulation, a business is a business, whether, to me, it doesn't really matter which part of the house it's in. It's in the kitchen or the, we're talking about a home occupation business permit here. And number 4, no exterior operation of any home occupation is permitted. Refilling the canisters have to go outside. You cannot bring these big giant propane tanks in to the garage, so you're going to have to take those outside. So to me, that certainly implies that there will be exterior use. And number 6, I can also not make that finding because we did receive a letter that said that sometimes, and I know it's infrequent, that customers come, and one of the letters actually said that they've received training. So to me, if you're getting trained, you're a student. It says the business shall not generate any customer, client, or student. Number 9, all home occupations shall have a valid Town of Yountville business license. And you've said here that they've had one since 2010, and that's really one of the big issues. It was for a home-based computer, telephone type of business, not in any way what we're talking about here. So I can't make that finding either. Number 10B involves the storage of equipment, vehicles, or supplies outside of the dwelling of any accessory structure. I can't see the relationship between the propane tanks that need to be probably put in cages and stored on a concrete pad for a business use. I think it's quite different if you have a propane tank hooked to the barbecue grill that you might, on occasion, once a week, every 2 weeks or whatever, go out and, cook some hamburgers or hot dogs, versus something that's in routine use for business. Also, I think you've also pointed out, in 10C, that this does involve the creation or storage of toxic and hazard materials. So I cannot make that finding. Almost done, down to the use permit findings. On number 1, where it talks about the feature, size, and intensity contemplated by the location is necessarily and desirable. Again, I didn't come up with the language about the F2 factory, nor that it's a manufacturing facility. That was that came from our fire and safety experts and the town. And finally, on item 2E, at the very end, says the treatment given as appropriate to such aspects as landscaping, screening, open spaces, parking, loading areas, service areas, lighting, and signs. So what we're talking about here is the garage. Oh, let's see. The very last sentence, I cannot make that finding. Therefore, the nature of this use is not anticipated to generate any conditions that would be detrimental to the health, safety, convenience, or welfare of those working or residing in the vicinity. I know that some of the equipment is going away, but there is still remaining oxygen, propane. It's of a more limited scale, but it's still, to me, considered a manufacturing, and we do not have any other manufacturing in town. And to put it in a neighborhood, that's really what I've struggled with the most. I don't want to shut anybody's business down, but I think that the business owners can find other spaces where they can continue this business. So those are my comments.
Thank you. We'll go back over to Councilmember Dorman, please.
Thank you. So I think that I'm taking to heart what Councilmember Mueller says about what our job is. A lot of it is weighing things and trying to decide the best way forward for all concerned while still giving due deference to the ordinances we have on the books. And I respectfully disagree with Councilmember Mueller. I think we can do that here. Now, I will get to Councilmember Mueller and I have a lot in common in that we like to get in the weeds. So I've gone through the findings too, and I have some suggested revisions that I think would need to be made to get there. But on the front end of it, of the use itself, I think this is the kind of use when we talk about let's do a live-work space. We talk about that a lot. That certainly is an art studio. I don't know. There's a code that says manufacturing. I don't know what that means. I don't know if there's a definition of that in the code, but I do know that one of the conditions we will have is that however that code has to be complied with, this use will comply with it, or it will not be used. So I think this is the kind of local serving, truly local serving business that we want to foster. So that said, we do have to go through the findings. A lot of my comments go to the visits by clients, customers, students, patients. So that is, and as Councilmember Mueller said, we have two sets of findings. One is for the actual use permit, and then the other one is for the home occupation permit. So for the home occupation permit, I would say that findings F5, F6, and F7, I would suggest some adjustment to those because they basically say, well, they do say no customers. I think, and I'll be happy to read all these, and maybe I will just do that. So for home occupation findings, F5. And another thing that kind of overshadows or overarches my reading of the findings is it is our job as a quasi-judicial body to interpret our own ordinances in the context of how they fit together in our total code, in the context of what our town is, and then we adhere to that. So my thinking on findings is there should be more explanation of how and why we're able to make that finding versus, and not so much subjectivity. So all that said, on F5, I would suggest that the finding be weekly deliveries via U.S. mail or private delivery service are expected, and clients are not typically received at the house. Therefore, the home occupation will not generate activity beyond that which is normal to the surrounding residential neighborhood. I certainly can make that finding. On F6, I would suggest the finding be revised to read, it is not the usual business practice of this home occupation for clients, customers, students, patients, or similar persons to visit the premises.
So I'm sorry if I could just interrupt
Sure.
you, because I'm reading number 6 differently. The text I have for number 6 reads, no more than 2 customers, clients, students, patients, or persons in similar relationships with a home occupation
Okay,
may
is
visit
there-
the home on a regular business practice.
Oh, you know what? I do apologize. I'm reading my notes from the one we did not have before the meeting. So let me try to.
This is in our electronic packet,
Yes.
what I'm reading.
Well, that's what I printed out my electronic packet. So let me see if there's.
Can you double check, Gary, on the exact language?
I apologize.
Under home occupation permit findings, this is actually category E, the following criteria at number 6.
You're right. So number 6, what I have both electronically and in my printed copy is we are asked to find no more than 2 customers, clients, etc. may visit as a regular business practice. And so I'm suggesting that the way we find that is to say, it is not the usual business practice of this home occupation for clients, customers, student, patients, or similar persons to visit the premises. In the instances of such visits, no more than 2 at a time will be allowed. So are we all on the same? Did I get that right? Okay. So moving on to finding number 7, I find that when we look at it, it says articles offered for sale in the home shall be limited to those produced on the premises, except where someone's like a distributor. And in that case, we have other requirements on them, but this is not a distributor. So I would say we just say typical business practice, articles are delivered off premise, but customers may pick up. So that kind of goes to the client issues. Now, the other issues, 10A, where it talks about these disturbances, dust, fumes, etc., cannot be regularly discernible. I would prefer the language to be they are not readily discernible rather than minimally. Again, we should not be subjective. We should track the language. On 10B, again, trying to clarify the facts, circumstances, and interpretation of why we can allow it, I would suggest the finding be the use involves the storage of propane tanks in a secured cage in the backyard consisting of gas grill propane tanks sold for non-commercial use, because I believe that to be the case. Now, if that's wrong, someone can let me know. But I do think it's a barbecue tank, which I have certainly on my back deck. 10C, the toxic or hazard materials. And again, I am not minimizing any of this. I'm saying that this kind of thing can and will be taken care of on the second step of this. But I would suggest a finding that says the home occupation does involve the storage of materials, including accelerants, that could be classified as hazardous in combination. However, they will be separately stored in small quantities, and all operations and materials are subject to fire and building code requirements and whatever other codes that Councilmember Mueller mentioned. Under the actual use permit findings on F1, I would just like to add, when they talk about it sold in local businesses, I think it's important for us to note in this finding that it's to individuals located in our town. This is, as someone said, a resident-facing business, truly. And F2E, where we talk about a kind of in the middle of the paragraph where it says no clients or others, we should say something, or clients will not typically make visits. Again, just to not be subjective. The same idea down in the actual condition language, 1C, where it says products not be offered for sale. Rather, I would say the residence cannot be used as a storefront. Customers shall not visit the business for purpose of purchasing product except as described in this resolution. And I would add the same as described in this resolution to the final condition. And with those changes, I would feel comfortable, given that we have a next step where we will be assured of code compliance, which is health and safety for all of us, I could support the application.
Thank you. Councilmember Durham.
You're making me follow that.
You're not a lawyer, so I don't
So
expect
it's
quite as much
nor am I a chemist,
wordsmithing.
so I will try my best to explain. So it's always interesting to be on this side listening. I always, it's interesting. I've given Kay and Cindy bottles from my winery to make gifts for my friends and my associates and my family, more importantly. They came to my wedding. I walk by their house every single day where Stella insists on stopping as well. And we live in this small community. I'm trying to find my notes, I'm sorry. We live in this small community made up of friends and neighbors, and up here we need to make decisions that will serve the whole community. And I've definitely heard the public comment this evening as well. my concern has always been that we're talking about manufacturing and we're talking about F2 designation, which is a factory. And I actually had people come to my office hours and not talk about parking yesterday. They brought up other issues. And one of them was what type of precedent this sets by allowing manufacturing in a residential area. Previous councils before me have stated that there couldn't be winery in town, which is a form of manufacturing. They were concerned about hazardous chemicals with Platform 8. And that was the current council, excuse me. And we placed quite a few restrictions on that as well. And here I sit with this decision dropped in all of our laps for a business that has been established for 8+ years in Yountville. So I get to say, no, it's got to be done, and the retirement plans are done. And I want to discuss that we're talking about major home occupation. It's not about Kay and Cindy, it's not about their business. And I feel what's important is to find a different solution, which Council Member Dorman has definitely brought up. I have great respect for Cindy and Kay and the business they have built. I purchased their products, as I stated. And my suggestion and my desire moving forward is how can we find the right option that is a solution for them specifically? I was adamant that what kind of precedent does this set? Because I hear members of the community talking about this evening about home businesses and what we want to have and be moving forward. And I definitely hear that. And then I had other residents come up to me yesterday during my office hours and talk about what precedents does it set to have manufacturing. And that was one of my concerns then. What is the town staff and town laying out for us as council members to really consider? So with that said, I'll go to my discussion about the findings. And this is exactly what I would like to see. Maybe it is a case-by-case situation. I mean, are we going to sit up here every month and have a major home application use permit that we have to determine? Maybe that's what we need to do moving forward. I also want to be consistent. I voted against the last major home occupation that came before us, and I had my reasons, which are all documented. Under home occupation permit findings, home occupants conducted within a garage shall not eliminate or change the use of required off-street parking spaces. I think the finding needs to be stated differently because to be honest, we're holding them to a different standard when people are building their homes and converting their garages to a dining room, and it stays as such moving forward. Secondly, under 10, no home occupation shall be permitted which B, involves the storage of equipment, vehicles, or supplies outside of the dwellings or any accessory structure. The finding states that it does, but we can make an exception. I don't do wordsmithing. I'm not a fireman. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a lawyer. And I have home occupation permits at my house. But if we're not going to allow this, we need to figure out how we can allow it to make this work. Also under C, 10C, involves the creation or storage of toxic or hazardous materials. I've been told these are hazardous, whether it's a small propane tank, which I don't have in my home, so I don't know the rules of it, or just figure out how we can change that to make it work for a home business, for an art studio that we're going to put into the residential community. Also, under use permit findings. Number 2, such as or features as proposed will not be detrimental to the health, safety, convenience, or general welfare of persons residing, would be A. The nature of the proposed site, including its size, shape, and proposed size, shape, and arrangement of structures, is residential. So what do we need to do with our findings to make that work within a residential community? With that being said, I just want to reiterate that I think as a community, we can make this work and make it come together. I just want to make sure that, you know, when we're talking about manufacturing, when we're talking about these things in the future, that we can be consistent and that we can be fair to all these other applicants who will come after this. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Well, I'd like to begin by saying that I'm very well aware that the general plan states that small family-owned businesses are encouraged in the general plan, and I support that. And I think of this not so much as a manufacturing facility as an artist studio. And I support the idea, especially since the two owners have been very forthcoming about making the changes that we are asking of them and being guided by the safety for the residents and their neighbors. And I think that, you know, we each can interpret all these findings in our own specific ways. But I really would prefer to trust our planning department and the fire marshal and the other experts who will be brought in. And as the applicants have already said to me, they're willing to make the changes that the experts and the planning department ask of them to make this compliant, so that they continue to have an artist studio in their home. I really do not have a problem with it, and I support it. That's it.
Thank you. I'm going to also start off with, this is when it's sometimes challenging to be sitting up here. You know, not only do we see all of you out there, some neighbors, friends, certainly the applicants, I think we all know as really good people, and that's not supposed to weigh in on our decision making. But it's impossible not to have the personal impact in our decisions. I'm just going to quickly go through, again, as has been pointed out, interpreting, evaluating the findings are kind of critical to our decision making, but I think also common sense has to be a part of that as well. I've heard the term manufacturing numerous times tonight, and we have to realize the scale of the manufacturing that we might be talking about here. When I was reading through the staff report, what kept coming back to me was when a corner lemonade stand with kids gets shut down by a big city because it's operating without a business license. And sometimes you just have to think, that's not right. When I first read the report and saw the escalation of activity, it was alarming, frankly, because it felt like it was completely unintentional, but it had created a condition that was unsafe beyond what you probably realized. But I acknowledge that you immediately took action to make it safer, not only just for yourselves, but for your neighbors. And you're willing to work within the rules going forward now that there's clarity with those rules. Looking at some of the findings in particular that have been called out, first of all, I can accept these findings as they're written. I don't need to change them, but I want to just acknowledge some of what I've evaluated, like the one that's been referenced, the occupation permit finding 2 about off-street parking. As was mentioned, I know homes that have converted. First of all, the state now requires us to allow garages to be converted to dwelling units. So get ready to see a lot more vehicles on the street. Sorry, Charlene. But, it's unrealistic now to expect the way people live is to be like me and actually park my car in my garage. And I acknowledge that. There's not going to be a significant impact on the neighbors, and those neighbors that would be impacted have said they've never seen that impact, nor would they mind it, because this business operates in a way that is very compatible with the neighborhood. We've already clarified, I think, the finding number 6 about whether any customers at all could stop by. The way I read this, no more than 2 on a regular basis. I don't hear that there are more than 2 on a regular basis. So I can absolutely accept that finding as it's presented. The finding number 10, creation of noise, etc., discernible to the exterior boundaries of the parcel. For me, that's the impact. I've not heard any complaints from neighbors talking about odor, electrical disturbances, dust, vibrations, fumes, or smoke that are impacting their properties in the immediate vicinity. And I'm not going to say that it does, just because I'm reading it here. The only thing that I remain concerned about, which is going to be handled through staff, is making sure any necessary fire separation or permit conditions are going to be met. I have 3 propane tanks in my yard, so I'm not going to be hypocritical about I have 3 propane tanks in my yard, but if you have a 1 gallon inside and you've got a couple in your backyard, that's less safe than my yard. So again, I think that's where a little bit of reality comes into this. I was a little concerned when I saw the extension cord running down the hallway, because, again, some of the conditions just unintentionally weren't in compliance. If you were going to try to insist that that's the only way you can continue to operate, I'd have a very different opinion. I think that covers all of the areas that I wanted to touch on. Councilmember Durham brought up, are we setting ourselves up for one after another major home occupation applications? Okay, I'm all right with that. But also realize we evaluate these on a case-by-case basis. The certain uses, the conditions, the intensity of use will all be evaluated on their own face with discretion that we have. It is challenging at times, though, when you need to make very real and factual determinations and not have emotion overwhelm you. It's not easy. We all look like we're very relaxed and casual up here, I'm sure, all the time. But it's challenging, and I absolutely respect that the applicants are going to, kind of correct what is out of compliance and operate as I know they always intended to, which is with professionalism and being law-abiding and be safe with their neighbors and yourselves. Frankly, I have neighbors that use circular saws on the weekend that I suspect make a lot more noise than you're making on a regular basis. And so, again, kind of applying that reality factor to some of the conditions, I think, helps us in this case. So I don't oppose any of the language changes by our resident council attorney on the dais. I don't see the need for them. However, I believe that the way they are written now, that staff and our town attorney have presented them, I can accept them on their face as they are listed here. So those are my thoughts. I think I do appreciate your immediate acknowledgement that some conditions needed to be changed and that you've worked with our staff to remedy them, and that you'll continue to work with them going forward to make sure your business stays successful but also safe. Those are my comments. I'd entertain any additional comments or a motion if there's one to be prepared. Councilmember Dorman, I suspect you might have one.
I do. I'd like to say one thing, and if it doesn't generate further discussion, I'd like to make a motion. So what I'd like to say is the findings that I am proposing, especially, I would like to see taken forward because of the I think it's unclear right now about whether or not clients in an atypical situation can visit. So if there's not further discussion on that, I would like to make a motion. So my motion is to adopt home occupation use permit 6565 Yount Street, resolution number 18-3509, approving a home occupation use permit for Yount Street Glass to manufacture jewelry, accessories, and art objects within an existing dwelling for the property located at 6565 Yount Street, assessor's parcel number 036-054-016, with the findings that I read into the record, and one change, finding the home occupation use permit number 6 will be, it is not a regular business practice for more than 2 customers, clients, students, etc., to visit the home.
Gary, and I suppose more importantly, Michelle, is it clear or Sandra, what Councilmember Dorman read previously? Does the council need any recollection of her revised findings?
One question. Does the inspection come with the occupancy or the use?
The inspection will come for the
inspection
separate
requirements and times. Does that come with the use permit or the occupancy permit?
You mean use permit monitoring, or are you speaking of the building permit for modifications?
The ongoing, such as what's already happening for the 2 major home occupation business license, that's determined after building?
It starts from point of occupancy, so point of beginning the operation of the business, and then it's monitored annually over a course of a year, and from time to time we'll meet with them to observe the
But it is
operation
part
of
of
the
this
business.
this use
Yes,
permit that
yes.
we're discussing now?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you also asking about the need for fire
No.
permitting?
No, I'm asking more about our enforcement
Right.
side of it.
It is a use permit if approved by the council, and there is an annual use permit monitoring that has a fee and monitoring by staff.
And we adjusted the previous, as a council, adjusted the previous major home occupation use permit to a month-to-month inspection, correct?
There was a monthly reporting requirement on foot and vehicle traffic to clients to the business.
Okay.
And that continued for a year, and now it's just subject to annual monitoring.
Okay. Thank you.
A question somewhat related, since I brought it up, finding 10C about furthermore fire separation may be necessary as building permit stage, at building permit stage. How, could you clarify exactly how you plan on making that happen and making sure that any fire safety or separation issues are properly resolved?
The applicant will submit drawings for review and plan check, and when the permit issues, it will have agreed upon retrofit measures that will be accepted and signed off on and will be required to be in place for the use.
When you
So
say
it'll be
agreed upon, it
reviewed.
means basically the fire inspector and or you tell them what they have to do and they say yes, and they make it happen.
They will present the code study for recommendation on how they believe their business meets the codes. We'll review it in-house and then accept it or provide other guidance.
So hopefully we help educate. I'm assuming you're not experts on fire separation and safety issues, so
Right. It
we
would
help
be-
educate them on what would be required to operate the way they would like to continue operating.
Well, it would be prepared by a licensed architect or engineer who's aware of the code sections and how non-combustible tiles might be a way to mitigate combustibility concerns as an alternative measure to, say, a firewall, which is a more onerous retrofit.
But I'm just trying to get clarity that the applicants understand that step needs to still happen if
Right,
the
oh, right.
motion is approved. They still need to mitigate fire concerns
Yes, yes.
properly before they can continue.
And we'll work with them to help them with that study if they're not familiar with what that is, and yes, help
Right.
walk them through the process.
Got it. Okay, there is a motion. Is there a second? Oh, Gary?
If I may, yeah. One point for clarification in the proposals by Councilmember Dorman. One of the conditions that's placed into the home occupation permit is that customers shall not visit the business for the purpose of purchasing product except as described in this resolution. And then in one of the findings, it says customers may pick up products in atypical circumstances, but doesn't provide more detail on that. And I think that might be difficult for staff to figure out what an atypical circumstance is, and it's probably also difficult for the applicant to comply with that. So I might suggest providing some clarity on what an atypical situation is or when a customer can pick up something.
Would it be acceptable to the motioner to say something to the effect of it is prohibited as a course of the regular operations of the business?
Yes.
And then if there is a egregious, if all of a sudden they're having people parade in and out of there, then our staff will evaluate that.
Absolutely acceptable, thank you.
Did that make sense to you, Gary? Just so the council understands what I just said.
Yes. That would be added to finding 7. Instead of ending, but customers may pick up products in atypical circumstances, it would say customers are prohibited from picking up products as part of the normal business operations.
Or daily. I was saying more daily, I think, than normal. I think the point is we're trying not to turn this into a retail shop. But we don't also want to prohibit them from having their clients come by when products are ready and let them pick them up.
Okay. So we can frame that.
Is that?
Yes, that's exactly what I had in mind, yes.
And I don't know if, Gary, you want to have the ability to maybe think of the exact language, and if the motioner could say, as described, as clarified by town attorney?
Well, I wonder if, are there like a number of days a month that might be a limit? Say like no more than 4 days a month, or no more than twice a week, or no more than once a week, or...
Well, when you look at actually the finding that we have, it really only says articles offered for sale in a home occupation shall be limited to those produced on the premises. It really does not address, in our situation, when or how customers can pick it up, because the next clause, starting except where, is for a distributorship. I was trying to maintain the integrity of the originally proposed findings, but I actually think we could just say all articles offered for sale are produced on the premises, period.
Okay. And
but if we wanted to limit it, I think we could go on to say typical business practice is that articles are delivered off premise.
so I think the confusion is going to come up with the first condition that you proposed, which says customers shall not visit the business except as allowed in the resolution. So that references back up to your proposed language for atypical. And I apologize for complicating this more than it needs to be if I am.
Well, I think what I had in mind was that I tried to use the word typical, atypical, and I meant I also think we could take that out. Customers shall not visit the business for purpose of purchasing product, because that's no longer what we're really saying. So I think the last actual condition for us is the residence cannot be used as a storefront. That's what we're trying to say. That's what I'm trying to say as the motioner.
So they can still visit 2 at a time.
According to finding 6.
Yes. Just to be clear.
Yes.
Okay. So then the changes are under finding 7, strike out the last part of the proposed change, starting with but customers may pick up products. That's out. And the second sentence in the first condition is also out, starting with customers shall not visit.
Yes, I am agreeable to those changes. Thank you.
In reading this again, the finding 7, if the main intent articles offered for sale in a home occupation shall be limited to those produced on the premises, I don't know that it needs any of the rest of that finding, to be honest, except where and maybe this is where you have to be legally protected. except where the person conducting the home occupation serves as an agent or intermediary between off-site suppliers and off-site customers, in which case all articles except for samples shall be received, stored, and sold directly to customers at off-site locations. I don't know that all of the rest of that even applies here.
It may not.
Can we get rid of it?
Yes.
Is it acceptable to the motioner on finding 7 that the finding is articles offered for sale in home occupation shall be limited to those produced on the premises? And then the finding is that the jewelry, accessories, and art projects are delivered to clients at off-site locations. No items will be offered for sale at the house. That's the language you still need. You want to modify that, correct?
Right, and I think, excuse me, based on what you've said and my reading, my same reading of our ordinance is that it would be sufficient to simply say all articles offered for sale are produced on the premises, because we never reach the except for.
Right. But then are you okay with the finding that all of the products are delivered to clients at off-site locations? Because we understand that regular businesses, they would sometimes come and pick it up.
Right, I would, ideally I would change the F7, our finding, to simply be all articles offered for sale are produced on the premises. I think that covers the portion of, it's our finding that they're all produced on the premises. And that's as
Not
far as
concerned
we have
whether
to go.
whether clients pick it up on property or not.
No, because I don't think we get to the second clause of that.
Okay. I'm just asking for clarity. So you've amended your motion to modify finding 7 to eliminate everything after the first sentence to the comma.
Right.
Okay. Is that clear to attorney, staff?
Yes.
Okay. Vice Mayor, I think you were
seconded.
going to second. So you're seconding the revised motion?
I am.
Okay. Michelle, are we all clear on that? Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Is this working electronically, Michelle?
I have a screen.
Yes, it is.
I do not.
I do not either. So let's go ahead and have a voice vote. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, so that passes 4-1. Thank you all for your patience as we had to get through that last little technicality. Remember what I said about the applause thing, people. Be kind, remember. Be kind to the council. What I'm going to suggest is we take a 5-minute recess, comfort break. Please, 5 minutes. Welcome back to our council meeting. We're going to move on to item 9B, RH Gallery Use Permit Amendment. And so I don't forget a disclosure as we get into the hearing. I did take a site visit with the applicants to see in real time and space what they have on site that has been previously approved, and some of the modifications they have that are being proposed tonight in their item this evening. So with that, I will, Councilmember Dorman.
Excuse me, thank you, Mayor. I also need to put a disclosure on the record. I was contacted by the applicant. I had a brief phone call with one of the project principals. We did not discuss any information other than that included in our agenda packet.
You said it so much better than I did. What she said. Okay, with that, we'll start with the staff report.
Good evening. Tonight you have before you an application to amend the master development plan for Maisonnerie and the Restoration Hardware Gallery campus to allow a full-service restaurant at RH. And I will start here by showing a photo simulation of what the project will look like. It's under construction. There are no proposed changes to the buildings, the design, the layout, the parking, and the only change is to the proposed use. And the approved use allows for a 62-seat enhanced limited service restaurant at RH and a 62-seat wine tasting education use at Maisonnerie. And just as a reference, an enhanced limited service restaurant is one where a customer orders and pays for food at a counter and goes and sits at a table, and the employees serve their food and beverage to them at their seats. And it is different from a full-service restaurant in that a full-service restaurant, a client sits at a seat, makes their order, pays for their food, receives their food and beverage. Everything is conducted from the table. A full-service restaurant has a higher parking standard than an enhanced limited service restaurant, and it could be termed an intensification of the use. However, in this case, the applicant is proposing to reduce the number of seats across the campus so that it meets the town's parking standard. And so I would call it a change in use rather than an intensification in use. The applicants are proposing to remove 32 seats from Maisonnerie, so from 62 down to 30, and to remove 8 seats from RH, so down from 62 to 54. And at this reduction, the combined uses on both sites satisfies the town's parking standard, and that's calculated at the rate of 1 space for every 5 seats for the wine tasting education at Maisonnerie, 1 parking space for the 3 seats at the proposed restaurant use at RH, 1 parking space per 250 square feet of the retail at RH, and 1 space per 800 square feet for the storage and kitchen functions that are in the basement of RH, and those are more of the support functions. So since there are no other changes to use, this is the only issue that was analyzed in the staff report and the focus of the initial study of environmental impacts, that is parking. And the conclusion is that the applicant's proposal meets the town's parking standard. And staff has worked with the applicant to further refine the employee parking management plan. And before I get to the site plan showing the parking, I'll quickly skip over these floor plans and mention that in Building 1, that is where the restaurant use would occur. Most of the seats occur indoors. However, there are 8 seats on the front patio. The applicants are no longer proposing to have the restaurant seats on the interior courtyard. So you can see it is rather significantly scaled back. This shows Maisonnerie, and it shows the reductions of seats. At no time would there be more than 30 seats in use indoors or out. It'll shift from time of year based on the season and the weather. And here we go, we see the parking. So since the proposed project meets the town's minimum parking standards for the collection of uses, staff's focus was on the effective functioning of the employee parking management plan. And when it was first presented, it was conceptual, it was a placeholder, and we didn't get into the details. As part of this discussion, we wanted to better understand that those 11 spaces at the rear of the RH parking lot could really function effectively. And that's because those 11 spaces all depend on one another to move in and out. Those 11 spaces are devoted to employees and depend on the oversight of the business. And these spaces are very different from a more typical tandem space where only 2 cars are involved and only one car needs to depend on another car. So because we're talking about 11 cars, there's an orchestra that occurs, and we wanted the applicant to really share with us the staffing and how that could work, because it's unlike any other situation in town. And we are very satisfied that they came back with shifts and use of those sites that does not rely on the perfect functioning of it. There's really a buffer built in. So we see the 11 spaces at the back of the RH lot for employees. We also see 8 of the 9 spaces at RH for the employees, and that covers all the employees on a single shift. There are 2 shifts of 18 employees each, and what's unique about this project is all of the employee parking impacts are confined to the site itself, and it prevents those impacts from bleeding over to neighboring businesses and to the neighborhoods, and we've heard that's a concern of neighboring businesses and residents. So we are satisfied that the project complies with the code, and we are recommending approval pursuant to the conditions of approval in the staff report. I did want to share one other piece of information because I've received a few questions from the council members about the previously approved restaurants on the site, and it was the home of Frankie, Johnny, and Luigi II. Père Gentil and Vita, which was never constructed, but those restaurants had approval for a 130-seat restaurant with a parking space of 25 to 27, a parking lot with 25 to 27 spaces, and those were legal non-conforming uses. It obviously didn't comply with the town's parking standard, and so that use was permitted to continue under the town code so long as that legal non-conforming use was not discontinued for a period of a year or abandoned. And it has since been abandoned. That was in about 2010. So all new uses need to comply with the code, and the proposal before you tonight does do that. I wanted to mention we received some correspondence. There is a letter at each of your seats from the Council for Redwood Restaurant and North Block Hotel sharing concerns as to parking. And there is a response letter from the applicant's attorney as to those issues. I also received a phone call today from the attorney for R&D Kitchen, Hillstone, and Washington Square, also expressing concern as to parking. What we're hearing is that there's already a constrained parking situation up in North Yountville, but the analysis and the initial study and the staff report is that this project should not contribute to that because it meets its parking on site. And we received an email letter of support from the Burgundy Commons homeowners. Last of all, we've provided a revised resolution in your packet, and it includes one condition that we have required of all new use permit modifications that have employee parking management programs, and that's that the applicant provide a monthly payroll report so that we can verify that the number of employees was as represented in the application, with a provision that if we see an increase in the number of employees, we ask that the employee parking management plan be modified to address some level of additional parking on site. And with that, we are recommending approval.
Okay, questions of the staff report? Councilmember Durham?
Can you just quickly remind me who in that neighborhood, employee parking management plans, Stewart Cellars, do they have one?
Stewart Cellars, yes. And Jessup Cellars, yes.
North Block Redwood have one?
No, none of the other businesses.
So none of the businesses include
R&D Kitchen.
R&D Kitchen.
R&D Kitchen's not a formal parking management plan, although they have the tandem parking that we monitor.
So just to be clear, Stewart Cellars and Jessup, yes. The other small businesses, no. But the two that we have received letters from their lawyers stating that they have issues with the parking are not involved with the employee parking management plan in Yountville, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Other questions of the report? Councilor Dorman?
Thank you. And I may have missed this in reading the actual resolution. Is there a place, I see we have incorporated our previous resolutions. Is there a place where we incorporate the current package that we've gotten, the parking, the staff report, the site plans? Are those incorporated into this resolution somewhere?
They're included in the first condition that we generally put on all projects, and that it shall comply with the project as presented and as in the included in the staff report. I'm looking here. We don't have that as this amended application to this, but in one of the previous resolutions it would be included. So it's included by reference.
Okay, so as we would look back on this, we would see that that drawing and their tables, their narrative would all become a piece of this record.
Yes, but it's not included as an exhibit, but by a reference as to what was included in the staff report and accompanying documents.
And we've captured all that.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Question I have, so I think you acknowledged that even though the restaurants that previously existed on the site had more seats and by ratio fewer parking spaces, those were non-conforming, and that expired many, many years ago, so that has no bearing in terms of the ratio that's to be applied. You're applying today's ratio.
That's right.
And there was no retail component to any of those unless it was incidental,
Right,
like
it was strictly a
like
restaurant.
a T-shirt behind the front counter type of thing. Okay. Okay, no other questions? With that, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Before I invite the applicant, I do want to acknowledge that there was one e-comment received by Whitney Diver McAvoy in support of the project, and the other correspondents have been recognized by staff. So with that, if there's comments to be made by the applicant, now would be the time.
Great. Well, I'm Gary Friedman, the chairman and CEO of Restoration Hardware, RH, and also a resident of Yountville. Mr. Mayor and council members, it's nice to see you all again. It seems like it's been a long time because it has been a long time. I'm getting a few nods. I'd like to thank you for considering our request to amend the master use permit this evening. With me tonight to present our request is Dave Stanchak, our president of real estate and development. Also with us to answer any of your questions tonight are Brendan Sotokoff, our president of RH Hospitality and a former resident of the town of Yountville during his 5 years at the French Laundry, who's here. Daniel Orison, our director of RH Hospitality and a former director of Masonry Napa Valley. Stuart Wagner, director of RH Development. And Jordan Brown, who I think you're all familiar with, Director of RH Architecture and Design. I'll be giving a short overview, then turning the presentation over to Dave, and we're all here to answer any of your questions this evening. Thinking about this project, I'm reminded of a quote, and it goes like this: "The worst part of life is waiting, but the best part of life is having something or someone worth waiting for," and we believe that RH Yountville will prove to be just that. So thank you for your patience. We know this is taken a while. We're going to take you through an agenda tonight. Do I click or do you click? Oh, thank you. We're going to take you through an agenda tonight that looks something like this. We're just going to remind you for a second who we are. We're going to talk about our plans for Yountville, how they've evolved a bit, just to refresh everybody's memory, and then talk about the request to amend the master permit. So just as a second to remind you who we are, we think of ourselves as curators of inspired design, creators of inspired spaces, and integrators of inspired hospitality. Those are kind of three of the core competencies of our organization. When you think about curators of inspired design, we like to say we curate not just product, but we curate people, products, ideas, and inspiration. And then what we try to do is integrate those aspects together, where everything we do renders everything else that we do more valuable, where the whole becomes more valuable than the parts. When you think about creators of inspired spaces, we like to say we create spaces that are a reflection of human design, that are studies of balance, symmetry, and perfect proportions. We're obsessed about great architecture. We either find it, readapt it, or build it. As a reminder, some of the things we've done around the country. This is a picture of RH Boston, the gallery at the Historic Museum of Natural History, RH Greenwich, the gallery at the Historic Post Office, which are both adaptive reuses, as is part of this project here with the historic, I think, Burgundy House building. Then this is one of the many projects we built, which is RH Los Angeles, the gallery in Melrose Avenue in LA. As you think about a new part of our brand and business that's developed, and it's actually developed since we were last before you, I think it was 2015 when we first presented this project, and I actually created the menu as someone who who actually doesn't really cook that much. I used to joke around and say I make a pretty mean Pop-Tart. And back then we didn't know a lot about the hospitality business. We thought we were going to do something that would be welcoming and hospitable in the town of Yountville. And since then we've become a real hospitality company and are building a hospitality platform. But as we think about it, we say we're trying to integrate food, wine, art, and design in a way that creates an experience and activates all of the senses and cannot really be replicated online. So we think what we're doing in this arena is very unique and really value creating for physical retail spaces. And if you think about it, the first one we did, I think we should, no, would we open this? Maybe we just opened it, but maybe not. Art Chicago, no, we hadn't opened it. Which is the gallery at the historic Three Arts Club in Chicago. This is a historic building with a center courtyard. The building was, I think, abandoned for over 25 years. We went in and did an adaptive reuse, and we took this historic courtyard, created a steel and glass structure, and created an internal restaurant. You can see here in the pictures that has a combination of booth seating, sofa seating, table seating. And it was really our first attempt, and we didn't know what to expect. In fact, Brendan, who now also resides in Chicago, told me, he goes, well, I don't know if I'd open a restaurant here or not, and but I convinced him to partner with us, and we opened it, and we had a true hit on our hands. And I think the combination of really taking outstanding food and integrated it into a beautiful designed space, we think we've created something that doesn't really exist. And just to give you a sense for Brendan's background, Brendan, I think you were 17 when you moved to Paris and knocked on doors of the best chefs, eventually got a job without a visa, worked for free, I think, for 6 or 12 months, and wound up working for Alain Ducasse, one of 2 chefs in the world that have 2 Michelin star restaurants, worked for Alain Ducasse for about 5 years, and then eventually next found his way to the Napa Valley and worked for Thomas Keller here at the French Laundry, the only other chef in the world that has 2 3-star Michelin restaurants. And then kind of uprooted and went to Chicago, where he would tell you he'd learned everything about the back of the house, everything about food culture at the highest level with Alain Ducasse and with Thomas at the French Laundry, but wanted to learn about the front of the house. How do you create an environment? How do you create a restaurant concept that really works? And so he went to work for Rich Meldman of the Lettuce Entertainment Group, and Rich is probably one of the legends in America, if not the most well-known restaurant concept creators. And with $32,000 to his name, he created his first restaurant called the Gilt Bar, and then has built his own restaurant empire, mostly based in Chicago. And Brendan's whole idea about food is to take the care and concern of food at the highest level, like a French Laundry, but put it into food that we eat every day. And because most of us, if we think about a French Laundry or Alain Ducasse, it's really an occasion kind of a restaurant. And we think that's a huge breakthrough in taking this idea of Brendan has a concept in Chicago called Au Cheval, and it's won 3 years in a row the best cheeseburger in America by Food and Wine and Bon Appetit. He has a concept called the Donut Vault, which is won best donut in America for 3 years running. A steakhouse that has won best steakhouse, I think, in one of the top ones in the world. And so this concept and why we've evolved is, again, we came from an idea that I had of trying to integrate some kind of hospitality into a retail concept with wine, with art, and so on and so forth. And we've evolved into a real viable hospitality platform. And so Chicago has been a big hit for us. Here you can see we also have in Chicago, this is our wine vault. So this is when we first got involved in the wine business, when we became involved with Michael Polensky at Masonry and eventually purchased the business, which is a beautiful space. And now we're becoming much more competent in the wine business. And then we also have in Chicago this pantry, kind of a barista bar where you can get coffee and donuts, the famous Donut Vault donuts, and pastries in the mornings and throughout the afternoon. One of our next forays was in a building that we built from the ground up. This is RH West Palm. I think we call it the Gallery at City Place. This is a compound that includes indoor and outdoor gardens, and we actually stopped construction here midway This project got delayed even longer than our Yountville project because we had to figure out how to reinforce the entire building with steel so we could put a restaurant on the roof because Chicago was so successful, and that's what we did here. And on the roof, I wanted to show this because this is the back of the building. This is where, the entire back of the building is an art installation by the famous artist Retna, who you may have heard about. He's done exhibits on buildings around the world. And again, this is our idea of incorporating different cultural aspects of hospitality, of art, of design into these new experiences that we have. Here's the picture of the restaurant, rooftop restaurant in Palm Beach. And one of the things I think we've discovered is by and we kind of accidentally found this, is by using this outdoor courtyard in Chicago, realizing how people really today want to be outside, want to be in beautiful outdoor spaces, and we had built the steel and glass structure to enclose that courtyard, and then we've done now Palm Beach, we've done Toronto, and we've done Nashville. And all have this kind of indoor-outdoor feel. You're inside, but you feel like you're outside. You have the beautiful sunlight coming through. You have the olive trees dappling the light. And it's really a unique experience. We found that people love being in that kind of an environment. And that's one of the things that delayed our project here, because they said, okay, we have to figure out how we can have a glass roof on our building in Yountville. And first everybody said, no, you can't do it. It's what is it, Title 24, or the energy codes, California can't make it happen. And I was in Las Vegas for a real estate convention in the Wynn Hotel, and the sun was shining directly into my room, yet my room was cool. And I thought about it, and I thought, wait a minute, all the hotels in Las Vegas are all glass. They've figured out how to make it so it's not boiling hot and doesn't use too much energy. We can figure it out, and we worked with the company and created a glass roof that can reflect enough light and heat off it and pass Title 24. So I think what we're creating here in Yountville is going to be really, really special. And one of the things of being a resident here, wanting to go to lunch or go to breakfast somewhere and sit outside, there's not too many choices. You can go to Bouchon and you try to get one of like 17 seats wedged into the corner. And I think what we're creating is a restaurant that you can feel like you're sitting outside all year round, which I think is going to be a real benefit and something very unique to the town of Yountville. Here you can see our wine vault in Palm Beach, our barista bar. And then let me just spend a second on RH Yountville. As I said, it's an integration of food, wine, art, and design. And it's what we call one of our unique bespoke experiences, where we are taking the towns or cities in America and around the world that really where wealthy and affluent clients travel from all over the world to be, and try to create something that's really indigenous to the space. So here we say it's a unique bespoke experience reflecting the soul of the Napa Valley. That's why we start with saying it is an integration of food, wine, art, and design in that order. It's not really a home furnishing store. There's going to be 20-something hundred square feet of an expression of our brand, but we're building home expressions that are 60 to 80,000 square feet in major cities. So this isn't really about the home. It's really about food and wine, and that's what is so unique about it. When you think about how to think about the whole complex, we say it's a multi-building integrated compound, including an indoor-outdoor restaurant with a glass roof, with interior heritage olive trees. Here is the first restaurant where we actually figured out how to plant the trees in the ground, because the restaurant is on the ground. So you actually are going to be inside the restaurant sitting under 100-year-old olive trees, which I just saw the first 4 installed yesterday. And then we have the historic stone building, the masonry building, that we've opened up the floor, and you'll see a picture of it. So now you see this 2-story stone building as you walk in. That will be a wine experience. We call it the Wine Vault. a small boutique design gallery, all connected by exterior gardens with heritage olive trees, lush ivy-covered walls, trickling fountains, outdoor fireplaces, and decomposed granite walking paths with bluestone pavers. So we think it's going to be just this really beautiful complex and connected in a real integrated way. You saw this picture. This is the collection of buildings, and you can see the restaurant in the front with the all-glass roof, and then skylights in the two back design buildings. And then the kind of marching trellises that are like little outdoor living rooms that are covered with fabric that protects from the sun. Here's the streetscape of the building. Again, the first building is the restaurant, second building is masonry with the two design buildings in the back. And this will give you a sense for what it looks like inside. You can see the heritage olive trees that march from the outside of the building to the inside of the building. There's 8 trees, 4 on each side of the restaurant building, 2 fountains inside the building, all kind of indoor and outdoor, and all seamlessly kind of blurs the lines between indoors and outdoors. Here's the existing masonry building, and then this is what the inside will look like when we're done here in the next few weeks. So we've opened up the floor. You can see how now you get the two floors of vertical with the stone and tasting counter in the front. This is what the side courtyard will look like. Again, this kind of parade of outdoor trellises. At night, it'll look beautiful with glowing chandeliers and fountains, and then little outside living rooms, if you will. And then this is the view from the masonry building through the walking path in the courtyard and how they connect, so to give you an overall sense for it. So I'm going to turn it over to Dave to just speak to some of the key points about the request to amend the master permit.
Thank you, Gary. Mayor and council members, it's a pleasure to be here this evening, and thank you for working with us. I'll go through a couple of the quick points. Sandra did a very nice job of going through the application and the staff report, so some of this I won't spend much time on because it's been answered. So we'll go through this pretty quickly. So we're seeking to operate a full-service restaurant, and as Sandra said, it really is a less intensive use. We're reducing our seat count in the cafe from 62 to 54, and we're reducing the masonry count from 62 to 30, and I will seat a total of 84 seats rather than 124. So the key is we're increasing parking of 1 space per every 3 seats instead of 1 space for every 5 seats in the gallery cafe. The full-service restaurant will actually serve 68% fewer customers on an average day than an enhanced limited service restaurant. Think about it, if we think we would turn an enhanced limited service restaurant about 20 times. That would be, in a day, that would be about 1,240 customers. But a full service will be able to control the seating and will only serve about 486 customers a day in those 54 seats, turning 9 times. The other thing to think about is when you're serving less people, there'll be less food deliveries weekly. There'll be only about less than half the amount of the garbage and less than half the on-site storage. So it's a situation where we're really going to right size to what we have in terms of parking and our experience. The full-service restaurant also will have about half the amount of trips of an enhanced limited service, and this comes from the Institute of Transportation Engineers that says, at a peak hour, a full-service restaurant would have 15 trips versus 30 trips in the same time by an enhanced limited service restaurant. Sandra's already gone through this, so I'm not going to go through it, but we meet the parking code, and also just as a quick note, the parking code here for retail is 4 per 1,000, or 1 space per 250. Usually, we only have to seat have parking spaces of about 2 spaces per 1,000. So the town actually has about double what we typically see, and we operate these around the country. So we believe it's a small space, and we actually have a little extra parking in that area, but we obviously would meet the code. This is the site plan, so it's a little bit small. You all have it in the package that's already been sent around. So We'll leave that to questions and go from there. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with the questions of the applicants, and then we'll invite, and maybe it'd be the time to remind folks that we are going to limit everyone else other than the applicants team to 3 minutes per public comment, so we can make sure that everyone in the audience that wants to speak gets a chance to. But are there questions specifically of the applicants? I have one that came up just today, as a matter of fact. I'm not sure if this was the delivery of the 4 olive trees or not, but I experienced a big rig nursery truck that first pulled into the parking lot up at R&D Kitchen, and then had to back up back onto Washington Street because it couldn't fit. And then it came back around the other side from Madison in front of R&D Kitchen and had to sit and block traffic for several minutes because there were 2 other delivery trucks in that parking lot. This is going to become the crux of the challenge. How are you going to handle not just the employee parking, but deliveries of different size vehicles that can't all get in your driveway? And that's, I know, what probably this half of the room or wherever everyone is concerned about is the businesses next to you. How is this all going to work and fit? So we talk about the parking spaces for your business, but what about deliveries of larger vehicles, and how is that going to work, and have you communicated that with neighbors? So whomever wants to take that.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple things. One, we're not going to be selling olive trees, so you won't have to worry about that going forward. But we do apologize for the impact that we're making short term. One thing I think to think about from a retail point of view, we don't sell anything in our retail stores, so there is no movement of goods except for 2 times a year when we change a retail floor set. So we're not like a typical retail store. We're really a design gallery, so you'll just see an installation of home furnishings. We don't sell anything off the floor, so nobody can walk out with a bag. So there's no replenishment, there's no shipments to our stores except for 2 times a year when we do a floor set change.
How do you anticipate handling restaurant deliveries, that type of thing, and wine deliveries?
Want to take that? I can take it. You want to take that? Yeah.
And I think I heard from Councilmember Mueller also garbage deliveries and how that's going to be handled, what you would do with a full-service restaurant.
Sure. Thanks for hearing us. That's actually part of the reason for the shift that we want to make, and I can speak to this with a lot of expertise. As of right now, I own and operate over 20 restaurants around the country, and we operate both full-service and limited service. And David touched on it, but the sheer volume we go through on the limited service is upwards of tenfold what we do in a controlled service environment where we're taking reservations when we're really actively trying to bring people into the space at designated times and control their entire dining experience. The end result is, in general, just less deliveries, less waste, less overall impact on the town. And for us, one of the major concerns is actually operating out of such a restricted space. So we have to be very conscious of this and control our goods in and out of the space.
And how does that affect the Maison Henri Wine Vault use in terms of deliveries and vehicle traffic, that type of thing?
It's really all about coordination. And, we operate in some very restricted spaces all around the country. And it's really about, I think, leadership and management within the unit and working with our vendors to best, to curate specific times a day that we would be accepting deliveries and having the least amount of impact on the town.
Okay. I have a feeling we'll be discussing it a little further this evening as we go, but thank you.
Mayor, Council, I also want to point out, and I don't know, Sandra, if you can quickly pull up the site plan. There were 2 abnormalities today, which is there is a standalone drive entry on for RH. So typically, the deliveries would be coming in that route. That was not open today because it's under construction. So if you...
Well, my question, Steve, goes to, there's no way that a vehicle the size of the big rig I saw today could navigate that single drive aisle, could not turn around and exit So it's just, there needs to be an assurance that that size vehicle isn't trying to get on the property because it's not going to fit. And then we're going to have it parked in the middle of Washington Street if that's going to be needed. Now,
No,
I get it. We're in a construction phase. No, I get it. I get it. But
our
we
deliveries
see-
are made by typically vendors with small vehicles. So
Understood,
you
but-
will not see vehicles of the size that are involved in construction in post-construction and
But we do see plenty of large food delivery vehicles, and so that's just going to be a concern as we deliberate, and I know it's a concern for your neighbors, so that's why I brought it up.
Yeah, absolutely. We're fully aware of that.
Okay. So, Steve, you wanted to highlight anything further on that?
I just wanted to point out that you do have a different, and typically the small delivery, the more normal delivery trucks we see would be coming in and using that driveway and not the immediate North Block RH driveway, because their deliveries come to the rear, and if you look there, that would be where the loading and unloading would be coming from that north driveway in, and then they would exit going out.
I think it's common practice that deliveries to our restaurants throughout town are happening early, and so parking lots tend to be empty, so there could be a little bit more flexibility with that. Is that correct, Steve? Would you agree?
As a general rule, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would just like to clarify that the current use, either enhanced limited service or our proposed full service, they're both requiring the same goods to be delivered. With the exception of the enhanced limited service, we have at least tenfold of packaging, packaged goods, to-go goods, and waste. So our effort here is actually really well aligned with the town and having just a more controlled environment overall. In both enhanced limited service and full service, you would be seeing the same goods arriving to your store. In our proposed plan, we're actually trying to limit the number of deliveries that we receive.
Okay, thank you. I think, Councilmember Durham had a question?
Yeah, I have a question about narrative exhibit C, the employee parking plan.
All right. Daniel, I think you probably help me with it too. Okay.
So first of all, the narrative says there'll be 18 employees across the campus, but the parking plan only speaks to the RH gallery.
Correct. We then have the spaces 31 through 39, 38 and 39 on the parking plan. That's for the masonry gallery, and that'll support all of the masonry specific staff and the kitchen, cook, and prep staff for the RH Yountville building.
So all of the, if I see correctly, if you have 18 employees, 10 will be for RH in the back, and the other 8 are at masonry?
Correct. We'll always have an additional space open, so we have 19 total spaces. We have 18 that are allocated for employees at all time. And what's key about the parking plan too is we use a tool for scheduling called Hot Schedules. At the point an employee is assigned a certain shift, that shift will come with a number by which they park that day. So it's our way to really control and organize exactly where they're stationed throughout their shifts.
Cool. So at 9:45 a.m. on a Saturday, the morning restaurant crew number 1 will move from spaces 19 to 22 into spaces 27 to 30. So you're going to pull 4 employees off the floor at 9:45 on a Saturday morning to move their cars?
Correct. We're going to make that commitment, and that group is also in at 7 in the morning. So they've got till 7 to 9:45 to do a majority of their preparation for the day. And then they naturally move back to those spaces.
If anybody's going to speak, I need you to be on the microphone so we can try to keep track of all of you.
Part of the timing on that is that it aligns with the employees' break requirements.
All right, good.
Yeah.
And then the
Nice try, David.
The gallery leader is going to vacate space at 3:20, and the next one's going to take it over at 3:25?
Correct.
Very good.
Yep. It's an orchestration.
Very good. No, I understand. I just want to be absolutely clear
Very well
on it.
thought through, and of course, we may need to make tweaks as we go along, but we think this is a really good parking plan to start with, and the hot schedule is actually a really good tool and that we utilize.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Dorman.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight. So will there be a donut vault in the Yountville store, and will there be a barista bar in the Yountville store?
There's not a barista bar per se, but you can get a cup of coffee, obviously in the restaurant and some of the amenities. We are not proposing a donut vault at this time. If there's an overwhelming desire for one, we're always open to suggestions.
And you talked about a wine experience. How does that fit into a full-service restaurant? Is that something different?
Oh, the wine experience is in the wine vault in the separate building.
Okay, so that's in the Maison building.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and then your commitment is that the full-service restaurant seats will be only in Building 1, with
Correct.
8 of them on the front patio.
Yes, and unless it's the weather permitting, we would
With up
move
to
those
8 on the
inside.
front
Yeah,
patio.
correct.
And so you are committing that you will have no restaurant seats or service in the interior courtyard or buildings 2 or 3.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant team? You may want to grab your laptop there, Mr. Friedman. Any members of the public like to comment on this? Yes.
I found the whole parking thing really, really interesting. So actually, I just have a question.
If you could just restate.
Michael Bork. Thank you. 6786 Jefferson. My question is, traffic is, travel in the Bay Area anywhere it can be really quite difficult. What happens if an employee arrives 10 minutes early and the parking spot isn't open? If I were an employee, and if I was an employee that I would think if you wanted to hire me, I might actually work some overtime sometimes and things like that. I might just park in one of the neighborhoods because it's easier than waiting for Bob or Sharon or somebody to move out of space number 31 so I can take it. So I'm just curious about that. I get what you're doing. I understand that the challenge that you have been put in front of you in how to use that space in a way so that you can get approval. But I'm just wondering about the practical issue of somebody driving in from Vallejo or from Napa or American Canyon that arrives 10 minutes early.
Thank you. And I think what we may do is try to gather all the questions and then have you come up rather than bouncing back and forth out of your chairs. So I also just want to thank you for being brief in your statement and your question. This is a chance for me to remind everyone that's new to the room, we're going with 3 minutes per person. If there are still comments to be made after everyone has a chance to speak, then we'll revisit that. But who's next? This is the same order as last time.
We're choreographed. Pam Reese, 6887 Jefferson Street. I have to say that I really applaud this applicant for hearing some of the concerns of the community and actually de-intensifying their application. We've always had a restaurant on that site where Mama Nina's used to be. If you've been here more than 30 years, you know that name. And the fact that they're willing to make less seats in Maison Rue that abuts a neighborhood probably is alleviating a lot of concern in those houses. And I feel like the idea of having on-site parking for on-site uses has been accommodated here. If they can figure out that the ballet of parking, then I would say that this is a much better application than the original one or the amended one or the last one. So I feel like it really is more Yountville scaled.
Thank you. Who's next? It is.
In the same order.
In the exact same order.
In the exact same order. Whitney Diver McAvoy, President and CEO for the Yountville Chamber of Commerce. Pam, once again, fantastic comments. I have a prepared statement that I submitted for the record already that I'll read, but first I'd like to address Councilmember Durham's concerns about parking, because I have the same as a frequent diner at R&D Kitchen and Redwood, and of course visiting our members in Noyo. So as the convener of our businesses here in town, I make a commitment to you tonight to work with our businesses in Noyo to talk about some sort of parking solution. Obviously, that we'll be working with town staff to figure that out. But I think it's time that we as a community in Noyo come up with some sort of solution for parking. And I think it will need to be addressing R&D Kitchen and their staff, as well as Redwood and North Block, and of course working with RH and their employees as well, so as well as Jessup and Stewart Sellers. So I look forward to having that discussion. I think it's healthy. I think we need it. So you have my commitment tonight to get working on that right away. Okay, so my prepared statement that I submitted for the record. I'm here in support of the revised Restoration Hardware Master Development Plan, Resolution 18-3511, which includes a full-service restaurant in Building 1 at RH Yountville. With your support, RH will provide an exceptional experience for their guests, like many of our businesses in town, a hospitality experience that is truly transformative. The restrictions of enhanced limited service does not enable RH to deliver such an experience. As noted in their project narrative, RH has learned from opening full-service restaurants at RH Chicago, RH Toronto, RH West Palm Beach, that the only way to deliver their commitment to a transformative experience is through full-service restaurants. I believe we are fully aware of the parking challenges in North Yountville, which we just addressed, as it is important for us as a town to work together to mitigate these parking challenges. RH has modified seat counts in both Building 1 and Masonry, as well as created an employee parking plan to satisfy the, quote, parking demand for a full-service restaurant. As stated in the staff report, and I quote, staff is satisfied that the final employee parking plan that was submitted can operate effectively, end quote. While RH has made numerous changes and modifications to the RH Master Development Plan, RH has now satisfied all town requirements to operate as a full-service restaurant in Building 1 at RH Yountville and should be approved as such. I thank you for your consideration tonight, and I hope that we can all come together as a community to resolve the parking issue in Noyo, and I thank you for your support.
Thank you. So Michelle, who was the next speaker in the last item? I think they left. Okay, next. Out of turn, out of sequence. Once I close the public hearing, I will not be reopening it. So anyone that has spoken other than Mr. Friedman, who had all the time he needed? Yes, see, I knew if I delayed long enough.
I'm Ashley Tencher, 6740 Jefferson Street. And I would just like to comment that it seems like a very beautiful plan that will be very intensive in need for landscapers, cleaning a lot of glass. And I just would like the applicant to assure us that all that staff would be on their payroll. And if not, perhaps it would be independent contractors, and that should also be monitored by the town, because to hold that level of aesthetic takes a lot of people. And then one interesting aside on the parking is one of the things they do at the French Laundry is if they have specialty deliveries, somebody that's bringing cheese, they actually valet that person's car away. So they have a huge valet even for their own suppliers, and so the people are on the schedule, and they don't provide more pressure on parking for that kind of visitor. So I think there are a lot of creative solutions, and I think the French Laundry has done quite a good job of trying to make sure that it's not super congested around their site. So,
great, thank you very much. And I do want to invite the applicant to revisit the question that was presented earlier about what happens when somebody's early or late. Any other questions or comments from the audience? So what do you do? Oh, okay, now Mr. Tencher.
Alan Tencher, 6740 Jefferson Street. I can't help but think back to being here and listening to the challenges that were presented with your dealing with Gerard and their tasting situation in their courtyard. And when management and staff turn over, the challenge that presented to town staff in terms of adhering to what seemed to me even simpler requirements. And this is a really tight plan, and I just would like to have some assurance that with turnover in staff, there's continuity and adherence to the requirements to an already difficult parking and circulation problem in North Town. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what we can do after the public hearing is closed, I'll invite Sandra to explain in a little bit more clarity what is involved in the parking management plan and how that impacts employees on and off site in that area. Any other last chance? Okay, so if you could come back and address the issue of early and late, and how do you continue to fit those puzzle pieces together?
Sure. I mean, really, we're in the business of time management. I mean, whether that's taking an order of food and getting all the team members to align on delivering that product. I mean, even just getting somebody to arrive in uniform on time in general, whether the restaurant business is extremely complicated, with our staffing levels, our leadership platform. We really make a commitment to the standards that we believe in. And I think especially under the RH platform, I mean, we spoke briefly on retention and turnover, leadership and hourly members. We have some of the greatest retention in the industry today. And if we expect our team members to park in a designated area on time, that is something that we're committed to and we uphold. It is difficult. As we all know, there's a lot of challenges in town with parking. And there isn't really an easy solution. The only solution is to be disciplined and make a commitment to what we say we're going to do.
Thank you.
Mayor, Council, I will take one bit of credit on the parking management plan from a staff perspective. We had similar questions, and that's one of the reasons the town is requiring 19 parking spaces as opposed to the 18, even though they're committed to 18 on a shift. That allows one overflow parking spot so that if somebody is arriving early or late or needs to stage temporarily in a different location while they adjust it, we have that space accounted for. So I just wanted to point that out. That was something that staff, while working with them, had similar concern.
Great, thank you. Okay, last chance. Last chance. Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and invite discussion by council. Councilmember Durham, really? You're ready?
I'm always ready. It's
Well,
just
you never
what-
want to speak
What
first,
order
though.
I go in is when I'm ready. I want to bring up a couple of points related to this. I spoke to a townsmember constituent yesterday in my office hours, and it was interesting because I drive a lot in town. I'll be the first to admit it. I don't walk a lot. I go to the gym in the morning for an hour and I'm done. The rest of the time I'm driving. And it's interesting the amount of our locals who don't realize there's parking behind Summerston. There's parking behind Stuart Cellars. And when this is how long ago RH started. I was on the ZDRB when we first got these plans. So I've been here from the very beginning. One of the first things that the ZDRB asked for was more signage at the entrance of the Washington Street to show that there's parking in the back. And that's one, so people know it's back there. It's interesting to me that people drive over to Southside and complain that there's nowhere to park when in fact you can park right behind at Stuart Cellars. So we did that well at the beginning of, well before June 2nd, 2015. Also, Sandra didn't explain the employee parking management plan, which I'm sure she'll do in the future, but this is what I believe is the real issue in town. as the chef said, there's challenges in town with parking. I lived in San Francisco for 13 years. There's no challenges in this town for parking. From talking to, I never parked in front of my house, and I was never allowed to put boulders in front of my house to mark my spot either. But what's interesting about the employee parking management plan is that of the amount of times that townspeople of Yountville talk to me about parking issues, it's employee parking issues. And this is what's encouraging about this plan, is that it is employee focused. The guest who comes in to eat at this restaurant, who might have to happen to park on one of the side streets, is not smoking a cigarette with their windows down on their break, listening to their radio at a volume 11. And that's the beauty of it. There might be a few guests that are pushed to the side of the side streets, but I can assure you from my experience and from what I've heard, those guests are preferable if they do not find parking. Also, I worked at Mama Nina's as a busboy forever ago, so I want to be clear, I know this space intimately. And as Whitney spoke about a solution for parking with Noyo, half of that has already been dealt with RH, with Stuart Sellers, with Jessup's, with the employee parking management plan. And it has been a success because you can track who those employees are. And if they're parked in front of your house, if they're not on property, you can track who they are and you can notify the town. Or the town can have people going around and know who's causing the issue because they have a sticker and it's specifically associated with the business that that person is working for. So I like to think it's working, and I've seen it working. I don't park in front of your houses, I swear. But I also want to comment that I asked those questions about the ballet of the seats because I own a business. I've been in the restaurant business. I have 18 employees, and I understand all those situations. I commend you for the scheduling that you're talking about, but I would like to make sure we have a review to make sure that's working so that possibly we figure out if we need to make minor modifications to it and or if we need to ask for a valet or something like that to help assist with that in the future. But beyond that, I'm in full support of all this.
Thanks. And before I ask further council comments, I did mean to ask Sandra to explain just in a little more detail about the parking management plan and how it might impact this application.
So the employee parking management program was developed because of the employee parking impact in the neighborhoods, and it's, as Member Durham mentioned, it's residents are more concerned about the employees and their behavior than guests. So the program requires businesses to park a certain number of employees, up to all of them, on site. Those each vehicle will be issued a hanging tag from the town, and those tags are used when parking during work hours. And planning department staff does weekly monitoring, sometimes as often as daily, to see how the employee parking is going, whether employees are parked on those on-site spaces, whether there's overflow to the street, to get a sense of how well it's working or not. And we have open communication with the business owner, bringing them concerns, trying to finesse and tweak it if we need to. But the goal really is to work with business owners to get their buy-in, to let their employees know how important it is, so that it runs smoothly. It hasn't been without hiccups with all businesses, and it's taken more education with some business owners than others. But we do believe it's showing a really strong reduction in impact in the residential neighborhoods.
And looking at your staff report again, just again for clarity for everyone paying attention, with the reduction in seats, they now comply with their requirements for parking on property as opposed to having to find spaces in our management plan designated areas to comply with their employee and their patron count.
Mm-hmm.
So between the Masonry side and the RH lot, they're now in compliance with the seat count.
Yes.
Okay.
And fully employee parked on site.
Any other comments, Councilmember Durham? Councilmember Dorman?
Thank you. So I can support the project. I get that it's a quote intensification of use, but the reduced seat count, I think, offsets that. So I don't have any issue with that. Once again, I would ask my fellow council members perhaps about some of the findings. As I reviewed them, a couple of things I noticed is we talk about RH Gallery, and for example, finding condition 5 is RH Gallery is approved as a full-service restaurant. Do we really mean by that Building 1, and do we need to say Building 1, or is that clear from the staff report, et cetera, that we incorporate? And then the other thing in that same finding where it says the business shall not function as a wine bar or lounge. I think with the donut vault, the barista bar, the this, the that, maybe that's no longer sufficient. Maybe we should say the business shall not function as any eating, drinking, or tasting establishment other than a full-service restaurant. Now, that might be too onerous. They might want to go back to something else. But I'm just collecting thoughts on whether the as a wine bar or lounge still serves our purpose. And those are all my comments. Thank you.
Gary, do we need to hear from you?
I was just following along. I believe the council member said finding 5, but it's actually a condition of approval 5.
Sorry.
On page
just so
5.
everyone's following along.
Condition 5.
Where it says RH Gallery is approved as a full-service restaurant as defined in the code, shall not function as a wine bar or lounge. Is there a similar acknowledgement that the other Masonry building will be? I don't remember seeing that or looking for that, to be honest. Because that's where the wine vault is proposed. Do we need that language to be here as well? If we're saying RH is not, do we need to acknowledge Masonry is a wine? We're not calling it a wine vault. That's your term, but wine lounge.
I believe we addressed that in the prior resolution.
So that's again a carryover, C attachment
Mhm.
kind of thing. Okay. So that satisfies your.
Well, my only issue with any possible change in how it is written is that if it is a full-service restaurant and then I guess the question is, would they have to come back to us to add the donut vault, to add the barista bar? Because that would intensify the use possibly beyond a full-service restaurant. So that's what I'm trying to head off. But if they have to come back to us before they do that anyway, then it's a moot point with me. And I would only just talk about whether we need to mention Building 1.
So I would ask if staff would identify changes like that to be administrative and kind of within the scope of a restaurant.
Here's what I would say on that, and again, I'm going to start with an attorney term. It depends. But the first comment I would make, if it's a menu item available in the restaurant, not an issue. If it is a different approach and a different delivery mechanism in a different space, then that's going to require a new use application, if that makes sense.
If it's a separate space with a different entrance and exit and POS and all that, you mean?
Yep.
Okay. Gary,
So if it's
you're
a
nodding
menu
yes.
item,
Okay.
just like, I'm going to imagine with the kind of chef they have, the menu we're going to see on opening day and the menu 5 years from now when they're very successful will look different. We're not legislating the menu as it is today. So menu items can change.
So your remaining question about the Building 1 reference is what?
Is whether or not we need to specify in the conditions Building 1 of RH Gallery is approved as a full-service restaurant.
If it makes the council comfortable, that makes sense. You can just add that clarification.
I think the argument would be that we're already designating the exact number of seats so that whether we care about the exact footprint of that or not, I'm not sure that the seat count is dictating the parking, and that's the main concern, I think.
We think it's addressed, but again, for clarity, if you want to be really clear that the only place that is a full-service restaurant is Building 1, then that's your best way to clarify that.
So how about we put a pin in that until we hear from the rest of the council? Councilmember Moeller?
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is a really great project. I heard all your great presentations and your words and about your hospitality and all your plans. But what I like to say, with the changes that you've made, is that I think now you kind of get Yountville. And that really is kind of hard to define, but a lot of the pushback you got at some of the previous meetings when, when I went home and after our meeting had my glass of wine, I said, I wish I could just talk to him and say, you don't get us yet. We heard about this and that, but that's not who we are. And I think now you really do get us. And I think that the type of people that we see that come here and the type of experience you're looking for, this is going to fit very nicely. Your parking plan is very, very creative. Hey, we might even want to borrow it for some future use if it really works like what you say. But if it doesn't, I think there'll be another app you're going to find that is going to make it work. So I congratulate you. I support all the findings that you have in here, and best of luck. And get that thing open. The olive trees are there and waiting for customers. So thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Well, I too want to welcome these changes. I like what our resident, Ms. Reeves, said, that it seems more Yountville scale. And I really love the idea that there'll be fewer containers to, put in the trash and maybe litter the streets, and people will, have a nicer experience being waited on in this beautiful space. I also wanted to commend you because I received an email from your next door neighbors from Burgundy Commons, and they were very, very appreciative of the relationship that you have built with them. And that's one of the things I was most worried about, because they are so close to you. So I congratulate you on working with the residents. That's always very important to us. But I, too, am looking forward to it, and I hope you'll at least have donuts on the menu from time to time.
I see where our priorities are here at this. Good grief. I just also, before we move forward, I want to remind the council we're asked for two different decisions tonight, one about the mitigated negative declaration and then the master development plan amendment. So in case I just ask for one motion, Sandra, you're going to remind me to do both of those. All along I've said, and I appreciate the Vice Mayor bringing up the notice from the Burgundy Commons residents. When we were here 4 years ago, whatever it was, there wasn't an awareness and an understanding of the impacts on that particular neighborhood. And it is refreshing to hear from many of them that feel like their concerns have been heard and have been resolved. The incident today, alarming. I realize you're not going to have a lot of big rigs, but it still did happen, and we do have challenges with deliveries. So in addition to the employee parking impacts, just be aware that that's important to us. And I realize it may not be the same in Palm Beach and Chicago and Atlanta and New York and so on and so on. But it matters to us in a significant way. I've also always said, Burgundy Commons neighbors and the immediate neighborhoods were a priority. The other thing I recognize is this has, as public comment recognized, this has been a restaurant site for generations. It's whether it's a non-compliant parking ratio or not, I don't see this as a real intensification of the use of the site. It's just that we've gotten so used to it being vacant for years and years now, and then we had a wall in front of it for 4 years or 3 years, knowing that the big Move the Bus reveal is going to happen here soon, and we're going to see a really gorgeous evolution of the site. And all that is great, and we acknowledge it, and we know that that's going to fit here in Yountville. We still have the practical concerns that you've been hearing us discuss and consider tonight. I also have said with other projects throughout the town that we need to be progressive thinking and creative with our parking situation. I know Councilmember Durham often talks about the areas in town that have what we consider parking challenges. But we also need to be looking to the future about, I never drive my car to go to dinner anymore. Thankfully, when I go in Yountville, I walk. But when I go to Napa, I'm ride sharing all the time. And so we need to be aware that not every patron in every restaurant is now driving 2 people per car or even 4 people per car if they're coming from outside the area. We pride ourselves on our walkability, and we have some incredible hotels and B&Bs that have people already here in town that are going to be walking, as they do to all of the other restaurants at the north end of town and the south end of town. We need to manage the employees even more than the patrons, I think, and I think this project has finally gotten there. It was notable, the recognition of the seat count on both sites that needed to come down in order to find that balance. So I do commend you for doing that. And I was very slow in buying into the full service is less impactful than the other types of business. But I do acknowledge the reality of that. When you have people staying for 2.5, maybe even longer hours, enjoying the experience there, you have less turnover, clearly. But we also know with the kind of quality of restaurant services that we have here in this town, we also have a higher employee headcount than you have at your average restaurant elsewhere. So we just have to make sure that we do all that we can to not create unintended consequences at other parts of the town. And I get some of the criticism. It's ironic, Councilmember Durham talked about when he was on the ZDRB when this first maybe came forward. I've been on the council long enough to know that we used to hear complaints that we've forgotten North Town, that there's not enough to do up there. And now we're hearing about how it's so busy and successful that we have too many cars, and now we have a different problem. I'll take this problem over that problem, frankly, because I think we can find ways to solve it. So I never had any doubt that this project and this team was going to do anything but a very high level of aesthetic, and I expect service delivery. But we do just have to make sure that we manage the impacts. Again, we forget that there used to be dozens of cars in that back parking lot when it was a restaurant. We didn't have as many people stopping in the middle of Washington Street to get in or out of their rideshare cars. So I caution you to make sure that your guests don't fall into that bad habit also. And hopefully you'll respect your neighbors and their impacts, being fellow restaurants, and having their patrons, and allow them to provide the level of service that they're used to providing. So because of the changes you've made, I can support the presentation tonight. Without those changes, I was going to have a really hard time making the math work for what we consider our priorities. So those are my thoughts. With that, I'll entertain a motion first for consideration of a mitigated negative declaration. Is there such a motion to be had?
I'll make that motion. Get back to that.
I don't think it's working. So we have a motion by Councilmember Mueller, seconded by Councilmember Dorman. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. That also, is there a motion for a master development plan amendment as presented, and there is a consideration for a minor language change from Councilmember Dorman?
Thank you. The only change I would suggest is Building 1 of RH Gallery is approved as a full-service restaurant. And I'm not wed to that, so I can certainly accept the findings as they are.
So
your
motion would be which?
My motion will be, then I will make a motion to adopt resolution number 18-35111, approving a master use permit amendment to allow for full-service restaurant service at the RH Gallery site, 6725 Washington Street, assessor parcel number 036032008, and a reduction in the number of seats at the Maison site at 6711 Washington Street, APN 036440-001, with the change that on I'm having a mind snap of what we call them. Condition number 5 reads, Building 1 of RH Gallery is approved, etc.
And how about the additional proposed condition 10 regarding payroll reporting?
Yes, and I'm moving to adopt the red line motion as presented to us at the council meeting.
So that's already included in the red line?
Yes.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion by Councilmember Dorman, seconded by Vice Mayor. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, that passes unanimously also. So congratulations. We look forward to taking that wall down.
So do we.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
I can always
Just
give you-
to respect the fact we do have one more public hearing coming up right now, if the audience that's going to be leaving can do so in an orderly and quiet manner, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
So much for that.
Almost happened.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Congratulations.
Oh, I don't have the Jesus.
Thank you.
Thank you. So clearly, our public comments for the next item will go out of sequence.
Yes.
Our first three speakers are leaving the building. Okay, I'm going to slowly, as we have our staff change seats, go on to our next item, 9C, Municipal Code Amendment, for the item listed here regarding short-term rentals.
Yes, Mayor and council members, this is the final public hearing of the evening. This is a small change to the town's current prohibition on short-term rentals. The changes are both in red line and a clean version of the ordinance in your agenda packet this evening. The changes do two things. One, makes it clear that rental of one or more rooms in a second residential unit for a period of 30 days or fewer is also included within the prohibition. Second residential unit, sometimes referred to as an accessory dwelling unit. The town's municipal code refers to it as a second residential unit, which is why that term's used here. And then also to make it clear that not only renting for a period of 30 days or fewer is prohibited, but offering for rent for a period of 30 days or fewer is also prohibited. This addresses a situation where renting means to actually pay for the privilege of occupying, where there are cases where people are offering to rent for a period of 30 days or fewer, and then that is now prohibited as well. So this will aid in code enforcement efforts in general. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions of staff report?
Want a motion?
No,
hearing.
because
Oh?
it's a public hearing.
Oh, it's a public hearing, okay.
Does affect the use
Good
of
point.
property. So it's-
I will open the public hearing. Invite anyone here that wants to speak to this or not. Okay. I will go ahead and close the public hearing then. And Councilmember Mueller, you might have something to say?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance number 18-476, an ordinance of the Town Council of Yountville amending section 17.18.010 of chapter 17.18 of title 17 of the Yountville Municipal Code regarding short-term rentals.
Introduce me first.
Yeah, the introduction and waiving the
And
first
waive the
reading.
first reading.
Thank you.
Thank
I'll
you.
second.
Okay. And now the buttons are live again, Michelle. I don't know how that
Not
happened.
mine.
No, I'm still on.
Oh,
the
never
page
mind.
now.
You only get three. Oh, mine came up.
Mine came up.
Mine did not.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That passes unanimously.
All right. I'll keep going.
We're moving on to our first administrative regular item,
All right. The next-
introducing and waiving this reading as well.
Yes. The next item is another ordinance. This codifies the town council's legislative subpoena power. There was a recent case in April, City and County of San Francisco versus HomeAway.com. Part of the analysis in that case focused heavily on the fact that there was an ordinance that authorized the subpoena. There's previous case law that said an ordinance is required, but it didn't squarely decide the issue. Up until this case, either a resolution or an ordinance would have been allowed, and some cities have relied on resolutions, as the town council has in the past. This simply closes that loophole and makes it clear that there is an ordinance, so that there is no argument over authority for issuing subpoenas. If at a future date there is a need for a legislative subpoena, that'll come back as a regular agenda item before the council. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Councilmember Mueller.
Why is this not a public hearing?
This does not affect land use like a zoning ordinance
Ah.
would. And so generally that's always required for a zoning ordinance, it's a public hearing. And then there are some things that require public hearings, like when you're raising taxes
Right.
or fees or assessments and things. So unless there's a requirement or it's a zoning ordinance, it's not required.
Aha, that was my big question. All right. I'm ready to make a
Hold
motion
on.
whenever you're ready.
Anyone in the audience like to comment on this item? No. Okay. Councilmember
Right.
Mueller.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve and waive the reading for ordinance number 18-477, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Yountville amending section 1.24.050 of chapter 1.24 of Title I of the Yountville Municipal Code regarding legislative subpoenas.
And just to be clear, this is an introduction and waiving as opposed to approval.
I'll accept that change.
Correct.
Okay. There is a
I'll
motion.
second.
Thank you. A motion and a second. At this late hour, all of a sudden, our voting is working. That's great. Please vote if you have. If not, all in favor?
Aye.
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 That's unanimous approval. Thank you. Next item, budget adjustment listed here for increased personnel cost to fund a full-time accounting assistant.
All right, Mayor, Council, I'll be brief. There's a fairly detailed staff report, and many of you we've talked before. We've used a very lean staffing model, and as many of you know, we start off with part-time and grow. Recently, we've had an unplanned and unextended absence, and it's shown organizational weakness and vulnerability in terms of how we staff our front counter and finance operations. We use one full-time position, an administrative position, that's a 40-hour benefited position, and then we have 3 part-time employees that run 15 to 19 hours a week, and that's our staffing model. So you may see 3 different people, but they're not there, and with this extended absence, we've had some real organizational challenges to meet continuity, training impacts. Part-time employment has its unique challenges. We've gone through a nuance, and really what we're asking for is budget authority to move one of the positions from its current part-time status to a full-time benefited status. And as many of you know, I don't make those requests of you lightly or very often, but we've just reached a point where the front counter impacts have grown. I mean, that's the call center, that's the walk-in traffic, that's the building permit. They touch most all of the financial transactions and the change to monthly utility billing and the follow-through. So we don't need a job description update because the existing job descriptions are valid. We don't need a salary adjustment. I need budget authority and approval, so that's what I'm asking for you tonight, and the attached resolution. I will point out, we talk about what the full benefit costs for a year. I have some good news for you as we're going into the year. The actual cost will be a little bit reduced, but in fairness to you, all of the numbers are based on the full-time cost of a benefited employee, and they show an offset for the current existing one position that will be moving, which is why we have a slightly odd number of $64,000 some odd dollars for your budget adjustment. With that, happy to take any questions, concerns the council may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Dorman.
Thank you. So just to clarify, the 64 number, and you and I spent quite a while today doing math, the 64,498, whatever, that is the maximum that the new, that it would cost us.
That is correct. That is the increase from the existing part-time funding allocation to a one-year fully funded. And since we're already a month into the fiscal year, it will come in under that dollar amount.
And there is some chance that that we may be able to reduce part-time expenses when the new full-time, no promises, I know, but some chance that may happen.
Correct. We will be able to evaluate, as we always do, service delivery mode. I mean, and once that position, we may have a training curve, we may have a recruitment period, but certainly, again, for us, the part-time is a budget allocation, and then we've committed to you all that, we don't go over 19 is generally the point, because then it triggers full-time benefit status of PERS retirement. So we're very conscious at managing those. And sometimes an employee is not available to work those. So it balances out. So yes, this is a maximum exposure.
Any other questions? Any public comment? Nope. Okay. When you sit in the audience, I have to ask. Is there a motion to be had on this item?
I'll make a motion that we consider adoption of resolution number 18-3513, authorizing a budget adjustment for increased personnel costs to fund a full-time accounting assistant.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
I'll keep
Small
going.
Projects Grant Program.
As the council may remember, we included $10,000 in the budget for this program, and the assignment to your ad hoc committee was to come back and develop some programs and overview. And I'll go briefly over that, and then I'm sure the committee members will pick up wherever I've missed or augment. But basically, the program is focusing on diverse programming projects that are designed to benefit the entire town, and generally speaking, and I have to say this with a straight face because we've practiced this.
Too late, you've already lost it.
The happiness factor. The idea is we've tried to provide enough structure so that there's an application process and a screening, but we struggle with not to make it so programmed and so restrictive or so restrictive. So you've got some guidelines. The ad hoc committee is recommending 2 solicitations a year, a review and screening, and they'll be coordinated out of the manager's office. And then when we have an understanding of how the projects look or what is approved, then we'll involve the other departments. And we also anticipate that the ad hoc committee will come back and give you a report after every the twice a year solicitation and screening. And I know that they're already working on their ideas for flyers and whatnot to start soliciting. I don't know if there's anything more, kind of given the hour and the fact that there's a lot of detail in there. I'm being very brief, but if you have questions, I'm happy to go into more detail.
Any additional report from yes, Councilmember Durham?
There's, in the staff report, it states that preference given to full-time residents and local nonprofits. Just want to be clear, as stated in the Small Projects Grant Program information sheet, it's open to all in Yountville.
Is that a statement or a question?
That's a statement.
Okay. Councilmember Mueller?
So that was exactly my question. It said preference to full-time residents. I would like to strike full-time. You can't monitor that. I don't want other second homeowners to feel like second-class citizens. I was there once myself. That's my only recommendation, is to strike full-time. Preference given to residents and local nonprofits.
And the attachment of the Small Projects Grant Program information sheet, the PDF, it's reflected in there already.
That's what you're trying to tell us at this late hour.
Yes.
Okay. Then I can probably withdraw that request if it's in the official doc. Well, let's take it out of the staff report too.
Yes.
We're not really in a position to be amending the staff report.
Well, but if the staff
We're
report...
adopting a program, not the staff report.
What I will say, it's important that when this was prepared and put into the system, there was the comment, and I just think we make it very clear that the intent is, as is in the attachment in the PDF, which is preference is given to residents. So if somebody will include that in the motion, actually we're proposing you don't need a motion. This is an action.
Right.
This is a report on the
Informational.
status. Yeah.
Yes, Councilor Dorman.
Thank you. So to that point, perhaps we would be better served to just say any resident, business owner, employer, or nonprofit group may apply, period. Mm-hmm. Because we don't want to exclude our businesses either. They may have some really great idea. So agree with your theory and think we should just stop there. Say
Okay.
everybody can apply. And really, I want to say, in my office hours, I've announced the coming of this program, have gotten really good feedback. So thank you all for letting us do this. I think it'll be fun. We'll all be happy.
I think that language also is consistent with like our Arts Commission, where we have non-residents that are directly connected to the happenings in town. So we want to be more inclusive than exclusive. So more of an informational. Thank you.
Correct, just to get you, because you'd asked for some, the council had asked for the ad hoc committee to give an update on what the program was like, so.
So we've given you your minute order approval.
Correct.
Okay. All right, let's move on to, what do we have next? Any staff informational reports?
No.
Staff? No? Okay, council meeting reports, comments, etc. The July meeting of the Napa County Flood Control and Water Conservation District was canceled. Councilmember Dorman, do you have a Napa Valley Transportation Authority report?
The only notable thing was the amendment to the JPA agreement, which we approved on consent.
Thank you. I do have a couple of things here, but if any other meeting reports? Councilmember Moeller? Do we know why Clover Flats caught fire again?
Well, on to that point, I have, as chair of that board, I've called an emergency meeting for Monday, August 13th at 8:30. Thank you for letting us use the chambers, a.m. And in our emergency meeting, we will be discussing one item, and that will be the fires at Clover Flat. So, ask me on Tuesday.
Okay.
If I'll send you a text. Also, LAFCO met yesterday, and the major item I wanted to report on was that we did approve releasing the RFP for the really major project coming up, the countywide water and wastewater municipal service review. We will take a comprehensive look at everything to do with water and wastewater throughout the county. It's going to be a very expensive project. We've got, we're going to dovetail with another grant, and just a special thanks to our town manager, Steve Rogers, who has done a fabulous job as a member of the Focus Committee that has helped us steer this through. So thank you, Steve.
And does that relate in any way to the city and county's efforts with, I think it's conservation in general and development in general?
That's the related grant that the consortium is going on, and what we're trying to do is lay out so that when we collect the information under that one grant, that it can be used for this, so that we're being more economical.
We don't duplicate effort.
Gathering, because you're talking about the resiliency and the water study.
Yeah, well, when I hear really expensive, I hear passing along the cost to the membership. So.
Well, the county pays 60% of the bill, so.
Good. Okay. So then I will go ahead and 3 items. Tomorrow at noon, the Napa Town and Country Fair opens. It will be running through Sunday, so folks should go on down to the Napa Expo and enjoy the fair. And the livestock auction, which is always very popular, will be Saturday morning, starting at 9 o'clock. I also want to recognize the V Foundation Wine Celebration and their incredible success this weekend, raising $18 million in their effort to fight cancer. I presented a proclamation recognizing their efforts over the last 20 years here in Yountville. It was their 20th anniversary. They have raised over $100 million just in their wine celebration weekends here in Yountville. So an incredible job done by the V Foundation folks. And several of those folks are very local. I also just wanted to let the council know, and I have a long explanation for this, which I might save for another time. I will, for the second time in 2 weeks, be going up to Sacramento on Thursday to testify before the joint legislative hearing on Senate Bill 901, which is authored by our Senator Bill Dodd, regarding wildfire preparedness, risk assessment, liability for wildfire damages. And just to very quickly talk about the great concern that we have as local jurisdictions is the effort by investor-owned utilities to change the rules for liability and damage assessment, considering what we all went through last October and what's happening throughout the state right now. That's of great concern to cities and the town of Yountville to not be exposed on the behalf of the utilities to have to bear some of the burden when the responsibility of wildfires is determined to be that of the utilities. So I'll be testifying on Thursday on that issue. I'll report back on any developments. I believe that's all the business we have for tonight. Vice Mayor, something more?
Just wanted to let you know that I called both Senator Dodd's office and the Assembly member today at the urging of the League and expressed my opposition to what that group is trying to do.
It's a challenge for the cities to even fathom the kind of financial impacts that might be passed on, and so we are contesting some of the language changes that the utilities have when it's determined that their practices and operations have been the reason for those wildfires. So to be continued on that item. I believe this is our only meeting for this month. Is there any other business this month that we want to recognize, or early September? Samantha, I'm looking at you because usually you have something.
I thought you were going to skip me. The Residents Bash is next Friday. We still have space available, so we encourage people to RSVP.
Yountville Prom.
Be fun. No date. You don't have to dress up. I think it's scaring people. You can come in your jeans and T-shirts. Totally fine. So
As long as those are bell bottoms.
that could work too. Or a blue tuxedo. Whatever.
Thank you. Also, the note as a reminder, thank you, Councilmember Dorman, that the county is kind of reactivating the 2x6 conversations that have been going on. And this one's about the TOT language and specific ordinance language regarding the workforce housing increase of 1% throughout the county. We want to make sure that the ballot language is representative of all the jurisdictions. We have drafts of that language already here in Yountville, and we'll hopefully be able to match that up with the other jurisdictions. So there's total clarity for the voters. I know the look on your face, Steve, says don't worry about it, but anyway, you're not going to those meetings, we are. Okay, I think that is all of our business for tonight. Have a wonderful August, everyone. We'll see you at the fair. Good night.